Good morning and welcome to our pre-agenda interviews. Today we have interviews for the Land Bank. This will be replacing Wayne Fontana's seat, and this will be a term to expire January 1st, 2027. And this is a resolution appointing Tammy Thompson. Is that something you'd like to read into the record?
Yes.
Thank you.
Bill 283, resolution appointing Tammy Thompson as a member of the Land Bank Board of Directors, replacing Wayne Fontana with a term to expire January 1st, 2027. And Bill 358, resolution appointing Ellie Fisher as a member of the Housing Opportunity Advisory Board with a term to expire April 30th, 2025.
All right, great. And I've asked you both to come up so that we can have both interviews happen, not simultaneously, but we'll take one at a time. So we'll start with, we'll go from the first here. So we have, if you'd like to make an introduction, that'd be great.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Fisher. I live in the Friendship neighborhood and I'm the Assistant Deputy Director of Oakland Planning and Development Corporation.
Oh, okay. And how long have you been in that position?
I was first hired in 2008 and I took a 3-year break during the pandemic. Came right back to the same position.
Okay. Nice. Well, welcome. Can you tell us what your, like, maybe some qualifications you think that are good for, being on the Housing Opportunity Fund?
Absolutely. It's been really exciting to watch the Housing Opportunity Fund be formed and grow. Through my role at Oakland Planning and Development, I've used almost all of the different products through the Housing Opportunity Fund, and really they've been able to make a huge impact on the affordable housing work that we do in Oakland. And I've gotten to see, one side of how those dollars are impacted, and I am looking really excited about the idea of helping the dollars be used throughout the city, because I think it's just such an important program that we have here.
What type of affordable housing do you do in Oakland?
Morning, Erica.
I have to apologize, I don't know.
Absolutely. We own and manage 100 affordable rental units. We also develop for-sale housing through a community land trust program. So we've, over the OPDC's years, we've done over 300 units of single-family housing. We currently have 12 houses for sale right now that are 10 of those are affordable.
And so the land trust, so that means that you own the land underneath, and then does the property, and then the individual owns the structure.
That's right. And then they lease the land. That's just the mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
The real goal of the land trust is that we're providing permanent affordable housing.
Right.
And in the Oakland neighborhood, what's important is that it's owner-occupied housing, because there's such a rental pressure in the Oakland neighborhood.
Yeah, I work with City Bridges. I just wanted to see if that was
it's
similar
the same
model.
as City Bridges. Yep, exactly. But we're just doing Oakland, and the only difference is that we have a small part of ours that is market rate affordable, which is really just creating a space for owner occupants in Oakland.
And then so that do you allow it to appreciate like 3% or?
It's based on the increase in area median income. So as AMI increases, as cost of living increases, we just track, you bought it in 2010, say, and you're selling it in 2030. What percentage has AMI increased over that time?
Gotcha. I understand.
That's the increase you get on your sale price. Plus, of course, any equity that you earn from selling off the property.
Okay, great.
Or from paying down your mortgage.
And what are some products that you've used from the HOF?
We've used the FDSP, the For Sale Development Program, that subsidizes the houses that we purchase. We renovate them, and then we're able to sell them cheaper through our community land trust. We've used the, I'm actually just getting some HPP dollars, which is going to renovate a 6-unit apartment building that we have. And then we've been able to do really great renovations on our multifamily buildings. Putting in new heaters, replacing the roof, painting the outside, just helping us be able to keep up with maintenance of the properties.
Oh, great. I don't have any further questions, and we've been joined by Councilperson Strasburger. You have any questions?
And I apologize for not realizing where we are in this. Are we interviewing both candidates right now? Or
Yeah, so I
okay,
had
I
them
want to
both
make
come
sure.
up, and I just
Wonderful.
started-
Just wanted to
started
make
with-
sure I wasn't like ignoring one or
No, I started, yeah.
putting someone on the spot who's not in the hot seat.
Correct,
Right,
yeah. I made the executive decision to bring them both up.
Wonderful.
And
Good.
we started with
Good, good.
Ellie Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you both for your willingness to serve. Honestly, I think these are two great nominations, and I'll just say that I know you both bring separate skill sets, but very complementary to one another and to like what the board needs right now. We'll keep it formal. Ms. Fisher, I'm glad that you're willing to serve in particular, because if anyone wants to look up how to do affordable housing and how difficult it is to find financing, I point them to the article that you are often quoted in. I think it was a public source article that says, like, you basically have to cobble this amount of money and this money and that money, and it takes 3 years and it takes 5 years, and it's just a very complicated process and a difficult process, and you've been in the weeds and you know how difficult it is. And so I think that, and like it's kind of been your mission in Oakland to take either vacant homes, vacant abandoned properties, or vacant land and turn it into homes for people. So thank you for your service there. I guess my question whoever wants to go first, take it first. From what you can tell, what do you think what niche do you think that you can fill on the board? What will you bring that might be, as far as you can tell? I understand you haven't, yet been on the board or been in meetings, and you'll understand this better once you're there, after 6 months or a year or so. But where do you think that you fit, that you bring something additive and different from what's already there?
I apologize. I didn't say that. I didn't have Tammy introduce herself yet. I was like,
okay.
for some
Thank
reason,
you.
I was just but we can do that. Let's do that now. It's
Got
best.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you for clarifying. Okay, so please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will.
Because I think we're interviewing for 2 different boards. So
Yes.
yeah.
Housing Opportunity Fund.
Yeah,
Thank
so if
you.
you could just give a brief introduction,
Sure.
just like Ellie did. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Tammy Thompson, and I'm the founding executive director of Catapult Greater Pittsburgh, where we are hyper-focused on developing and implementing programming that increases economic stability, primarily in African-American communities, although we do work that covers all of Allegheny County and serve all of our residents.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, I misread. Thank you very much. So where do you think that your amazing skill set, that I've worked with you on a number of different projects, and I've kind of witnessed you from afar as well, will kind of add to and find a niche in the land bank board?
Yeah, first of all, I think the land bank is more important for this city now more than ever, considering our housing crisis that we are in, and being able to speak to the needs of the residents who I believe are being most negatively impacted by not having a functioning land bank for so long. I believe being able to inform policy that protects our housing stock is extremely important. The work that I've done as the board chair of Rising Tide Partners is, I believe, a model for how land banking should be done. Hopefully we can inform some policy and practices similar to help get a grip on our vacant property and protections that keep large-scale national investors out and help to get some of these properties recycled and back online for both affordable rental and home ownership opportunities.
Thank you. I'm familiar with Rising Tide Partners. I want to thank you for your service there. I know that, one of the neighborhoods that you focus a lot of energy on is East Hills, which
Yes.
often feels far-flung and forgotten by the city and other partners. And so thanks for focusing so much energy there for the purpose of informing viewers and others watching. Can you just tell a little bit about what they do and how Rising Tide Partners works?
Yeah, so we founded Rising Tide Partners in 2020. Over that time, we have developed very strong relationships with organizations within communities that have identified the need for imperative land recycling and protecting the assets of the community. So in partnership with those leaders in the community, we have fundraised and recycled and gotten properties back into repair enough to produce affordable rental and home ownership opportunities. We currently are in control of over 400 properties across the city. And in partnership with communities like East Hills and the North Side, Hazelwood, Homewood, Wilkinsburg. So we're doing a lot of work in a very short period of time, and we believe that our executive director, Kendall Pelling, is the most brilliant person that I know in this space, and has the heart for protecting these communities, as do I and the rest of our board. So, Rising Tide Partners is doing great work. I think it's great work that can be expanded throughout this county, and actually in partnership with the Land Bank, I believe we can do some great work together.
And you had mentioned keeping wholesale, or whatever you want to call it, national investors at bay, and that the land bank could be a tool for that. Can you walk us through your thought process as to how, because this is an issue that rolls downhill and affects us at the city level, could and should be tackled at the federal level, but we're also contending with it, and our colleague Councilwoman Gross has been really putting a lot of time and energy and held a post agenda about this. But how can the land bank be a part of that solution?
I think the land bank, I think one of the things that we can do in the land bank is look to some other cities and states and see how they have used legislation as a tool to protect these communities. Make it harder for these folks to come in and purchase hundreds of properties at a time, which some of them have been doing. Hundreds at a time. I just saw an article about 2 weeks ago that spoke to almost 600 units of property being purchased by 2 different national investors. So I believe learning what others are doing in other parts of the country, studying that as a land bank, and then introducing it to our city council and hoping to get some protective measures in place should be one of the main things that we're focused on. And really just getting an understanding of what our properties, what does it look like in each city, in each community, and supporting and providing resources as well to those entities and those communities who are doing the hard work and trying to save a property here and a property there, which we know is not going to solve the issue at scale. So I'm super excited to get in and work with partners and kick some ideas around and do what we need to do to protect our housing in the city.
Thank you for your willingness to serve. Sure. Honestly, I really appreciate it. And as for the Housing Opportunity Fund, again, I knew this from yesterday, or from the nomination. I just had a moment here. So I think the question still applies, though, given your background. What niche do you think that you bring to the Housing Opportunity Fund Board, or what niche will you fill? What will you? What new kind of skill set or perspective might you bring?
Well, I know that there's a number of people on the board who already do use the different programs, and so I'll be adding to that skill set, right, of people that use them. I forgot to mention we also use the HAP program, the Housing Assistance Program. We try to bring as many of those dollars as we can into Oakland residents who really need help fixing up their homes, right, so that they can stay in their homes and have safe housing. So the variety of programs that I use, the understanding of different markets, right? Like each neighborhood is completely different in how they function, right? And the needs are slightly different, but the Housing Opportunity Fund does a great job of applying to all the different neighborhoods. And then, one of the things I'd like to see is how can we make sure that these dollars are impacting the most residents as we can, right? Like, and quickly as we can. Like, how can we make it more efficient for organizations like OPDC and others that are doing amazing work, and Rising Tide Partners, so just got to second how wonderful they are, and Catapult, of course. That like getting these dollars out in a really efficient way, but that's also responsible, right? So yeah.
And being nimble as a board, I think also the markets change as the needs change, as we get new data, as we get new information, that, what is needed in one community is like affordable homes for purchase, like family, for family size homes. And what might be needed in lots of other communities might be, family rental units. So like it's just like at a certain level of affordability, and it's just going to be, as you mentioned, different, somewhat tailored, maybe not 90 different neighborhoods wide, but tailored to cover the needs of the city, the actual needs of the city as it changes year to year to year.
And what programs worked, and then which programs didn't quite work and need to be adjusted. That's constantly changing too as we try out new ways to keep properties affordable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for your, I know you've both served the city in the past, but in different ways, but thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity, respectively, these two capacities, and for all that you do outside of the city as well. So thanks for being here today. I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. And Ms. Thompson, I have a couple questions for Land Bank. Looking forward to working with you. So with your work at Catapult, what are some of the examples of the economic justice opportunities?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Our primary focus is helping families address poverty trauma. That's the first thing, and it's at the core of every program that we offer. So addressing the trauma that tells people that they can't be a homeowner or that they can't be an entrepreneur is one of the biggest barriers to people becoming economically secure and stable. So as we are doing that work, we're also introducing trauma-informed financial education, trauma-informed first-time homebuyer education that also includes estate planning, and I'll tell you a little bit about why that's important. Yeah,
I'm familiar.
Right.
I imagine
it's a big problem.
You'll be an interesting scenario with the land bank then.
Yes, and so
we look to clear title and take possession.
It's a challenge. And so over the last 20 years or so, we've had interactions with folks who have tangle title issues because an heir or a primary homeowner passed away without a will. It is contributing to our vacancy and our blight and abandonment in communities. So we have launched a program called CLEAR, stands for the Clinic for Legal Equity and Repairs, that will be helping families address tangle title issues and repair issues that come hand in hand typically with folks who are unable to get title to their property. We've had a national lender invest $3 million to this program to help us get started to address these tangle title issues, and that is work that I think will also be very relevant to the land bank as well.
So all very important work. How do people connect with Empower?
I'm sorry,
I'm Catapult.
How do you connect with us?
Yeah.
Well, I'm here. You can always reach out directly to me, or people can go directly to our website at www.catapultpittsburgh.org, and There's an intake and application link on every program tab. So if folks are interested, if they just have questions, they can also email us at info@catapultpittsburgh.org.
Great. And I just didn't know, is it, like, are you typically, are there people, not you, but like people that work for Catapult, are they typically at like, different community events to
Oh yeah, we do a
engage
lot
with
of
people?
community events. We are actually planning some events for the spring and summer so that we can be in the community, be very visible in the community, but also partnering with organizations that work specifically with seniors. Seniors do not utilize, so we use a lot of social media to do outreach and marketing, but for this particular program, we know that we have to go into the community and work with trusted community partners so that seniors know that they are safe with us. We need to get a grip on the Tangle Title situation.
I'm glad you brought that up at the end there, because and previously you were talking about some of the work that you do for the economic justice opportunities. And the reason why I asked about how people reach out to Catapult is because a lot of times government thinks that we can like solve problems through like a policy. And there's a policy that I've been looking at for some time, and I've never really enacted on doing it here. But it's where I know they require it in Philadelphia, where that at a funeral home, requiring all funeral homes to provide all the information relevant to like things like Tangle Title to the family. So there is that education piece that's available, because as we see with many properties across the city, they have 20 owners.
Yeah.
There's 20 different recipients that could be, the title's tangled, and there's, it'd be really hard for them to work themselves out of that to actually own the property.
Yeah, by the time it gets to the funeral home, it's a little too late. So we like to be proactively doing this work as part of the homebuyer education process, including estate planning. In the first-time homebuyer education is very important. Catch people as they're becoming homeowners so that they understand the importance of that. But also going directly to homeowners, whether they're senior homeowners or people who have inherited a property, although, a lot of folks believe that they are the rightful heir to a property just because a parent or grandparent dies, and that is not true. There has to be an actual process through probate of a will to get an heir's name on the deed. So education is going to be really important, getting into communities, helping people understand what the true process for passing along an asset is. And this is one of the big challenges with generational wealth, particularly in the African American community. We have to be discussing this very intentionally so that people understand the role of transferring property. I went to a conference in D.C. a couple of weeks ago and found out it's not just an issue here in Pennsylvania. It is a national multi-billion-dollar problem, multi-billion dollars of lost generational wealth through home ownership. So, we're very committed to this here, and I'm hoping we can help a lot of people.
That's why I prefaced my comment by saying government thinks that they can solve issues. That's why, the funeral home, requiring them to work with the paperwork. It seemed kind of last minute,
Yeah.
So this is one of the reasons why I was holding off on introducing it. So I wanted to just thank both of you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Me too.
And been a great conversation. Looking to many more. And if we have anything further?
Well, I guess just consider us as council a resource if we can ever be one as you begin on these boards. But I think probably I'm guessing that will actually be flipped, and you'll be providing you'll be the resource for us. So in either way, thank you for your service and willingness to serve on these boards.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. And then thanks for coming today. So we're gonna recess here for 5 minutes. And then we'll be engaging with our standing committee meeting. But thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
With that, we are recessed.
Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website. And for guest speakers who are joining us at the table, please do not turn off your microphones. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Charland, Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross, Mr. Lavelle, Mr. Mosley, Mrs. Kell-Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Warwick,
Here.
Mr. Wilson,
Here.
Ms. Strasburger, Chair.
Here.
5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before city council. Profanity will not be permitted. Please state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first we do not have any registered speakers. So anyone here wishing to speak can approach the podium.
We actually tried.
So, do I press the green button or just start speaking? Okay.
You can begin.
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm from Minnesota, and I'm here to raise awareness and propose an initiative for the city council members. We need to take action and brainstorm these ideas. What if we introduced a bill or a city ordinance that addressed property managers' concerns and the homeless problem? We can implement a program that repurposes abandoned buildings by homeless individuals who are under contract to agree to renovate these properties using materials or taxpayers' money. In return, they would receive a small salary, incentivizing them to contribute positively to their communities. Additionally, they could reside in these abandoned houses, providing them with stable living situations and work to provide them circumstances. Like, I'm not from here. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I've seen a lot of injustice since I've been in this great state of Pennsylvania. And we have the procreated funds. There's millions and millions of dollars missing. There's something with transparency and accountability that has to be done here in the great city of Pittsburgh, because I've seen suffering, but I've not seen as much suffering since I've been here. I mean, there's garbage that litter the streets, there's homeless people, and there's no reason for it. And I just implore the council to help brainstorm some ideas to come up with solutions to this problem instead of, laundering or stealing the money, so to say. And, and that's what it is. And God bless you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Good morning. My name is Howard H.P. Jackson, BPEP. Grew up with NACP all my life. I'm here about voting. Now, April the 23rd is very special. Everybody's been programmed for the big dog in November. And we have to go ahead and function. Our poor people, black and white, are ignorant about how important it is to go ahead and advocate and vote. I even heard people talk about it's a scam. All the politicians are crooks. You look at the blood and the suffering about women's rights, poor people's rights, and African Americans' rights. And the journey of all the blood within the past couple hundred years to get where we are now, our young people and the people, the public, are programmed with the things, Christmas, you can fall in love one day, February, Valentine's Day. Understand how we've been redirected on spending money for love and things. And the idea of it is, there's no quick fix. Just like the poor people's situation and all that, now you got a new administration in front of you. And I want the quick fix now, just like how they can go to the store and buy them a piece of bubble gum and chew it and then they're satisfied. Now, it's so important to vote. Understand, April the 23rd is very important before you get to November. And see, I'm a witness of sitting there and watching the candidates. But all the candidates that I watched and being interviewed and how they present themselves when they're running for office, they haven't said nothing about our veterans. None of them. It's maybe they might say Veterans Affairs. They forgot. Veterans vote. Hello? Veterans vote. Yes, and it's very important. Now the homeless and et cetera, but I haven't heard a politician advocate to speak about our veterans. Now, the ignorance we already know about the public, how you can be redirected. We got a congresswoman in office, and she's running against somebody. Here they coming up with boogeyman things. Now, saying that like she's not engaged with the president and talking about him, and she's with Trump. Here it is, she's up there with the first lady, the president. Matter of fact, she might even be here in the city today. Those people can go ahead and advocate and lie on people that's running for office. Now, the responsibility is get your butt out and vote. I don't trust Mellon. I goes to the poll and put it in myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street. Again, citizens, I want to say to City Council again, this is supposed to be family friendly, so you can say you are. But anytime you brought over 102 or 5 men, stop talking, because you're going to have me put out of here, because I'm tired of this. Listen, 100 and something people, men in here. And you had back in the room, we had our special needs children, autistic children. So over an hour, they had to sit back there. I'm telling you that anytime you have children like that, they should have been first. And I truly believe if Mark Brentley knew that them autistic babies was back there waiting until you just got finished, he would say, put the babies first. I fought for Mark Brentley to be able to run, because you remember they had where if you worked in public service, that mostly black people, they could not run for office. We had to fight for it. I fought for it. I'm fighting for the children. I come down because you all make the decisions and we die. Now you hear the homeless man, the man that just come in here. Did you hear what he said? I told you this before. Why couldn't we get some of the homeless people? Some of them are plumbers. They do work. Why couldn't we have them? We have all these buildings, some of these buildings we have. They could live there. They could live there. He said of making the contract. He knows a little bit more than what I thought about. But why can't you even think about something like that? But yet and still, you make the homeless criminals, you got them where they'll arrest them. I can remember going to Burger King when it first happened. The first thing, they closing everything down. Spent over $20. Had to go to the bathroom. Couldn't go to the bathroom. So I had to go up to the library. And when I seen them store owners, I brought them people from the fur, with the furs and all that. I brought them up here because they was talking to a man, a homeless man, with the feet all messed up, talking about, I can't work my feet. Do you understand? The homeless are people. We are human beings. Everybody's a human being. You're no better because you're sitting here. And you know what, you young ones, politicians I can't stand, because you can't shame yins. But the old ones, Bob O'Connor and Mayor Murphy, I chased them, and they tried to listen somewhat. But you sit there like you know everything. I am 77 years old and being chased up in the building where I live at. And you got the mayor come in and bring his politician friend a plaque, not only a proclamation, he just got boxes, but a plaque. Spent money for a politician's brother, just moved back here, up there cleaning in front of August Wilson. And so then the mayor gonna say to me, Miss Brown, you got a problem? I said, yes I do, and August Wilson would have too. August Wilson is the one who told me, one of the ones told me, keep coming down, Miss Brown, because if you don't, it's history, your history.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Special Agent Sunshine, representing everybody in the world, I guess. First of all, I want to return and sender all the voodoo sent to me in this chamber 900 trillion times. You don't like the backfire, please stop sending it. 1 John 4:7 says, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. My prayer today is thank you, Lord, for loving me and teaching me how to love others unconditionally like you do. Thank you that I'm not a liar, a thief, and I don't do voodoo to have power and control over people. You arose on the third day with all power in your hands, period. The homeless battle is not mine, it's yours. The drug war battle is not mine, it's yours. Thank you for being in control of it all. Amen. An act of kindness was God creating the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh day. Hours, minutes, and seconds had nothing to do with it. Man created that. Thank you, Lord. I'm not on the matrix. God, sometimes rest feels frivolous and self-centered. Remind me that it's okay to rest. I may not have a job, but I work for the Lord. My job starts when he opens my eyes. And I tell you, he doesn't like what he sees through me. So he sent me here to share what he sees. It's not good. I ask people to help the homeless. I'm not homeless. I left everything. There's a difference. I left my one-bedroom Section 8 unit of 7 years and my job at Walmart because somebody next door to me was doing voodoo death rituals on me. And I loved them, just like I love everybody. I left everything, took what I could and waited on God to tell me to leave. And he did, and he sent me here, only to find that voodoo is being done here in this town. Still on me. It doesn't work because I'm the messenger that he sent to shine a light on it. Stop. He's destroying bloodlines. He's not playing with y'all. He's destroying whole bloodlines, your mother, sister, brother. That is energy. Voodoo is energy. He doesn't miss. If it doesn't hit you who you sent it to, it goes back. If not to you who sent it, it's somebody you love. Your child, your mother, your sister, your brother. Insurance fraud is really big in this town. People think it's okay to kill people for money, but it's not. You will suffer.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Any further speakers? Seeing no further speakers, we will now move on to our standing committee's agenda. And we will begin with Finance and Law Committee, chaired by myself.
Bill 384, supplemental paper, resolution amending resolution number 105 of 2024, which authorized the mayor and the director of city planning to enter into an amended professional services agreement with Bromberg and Associates LLC for effective communication services for city meetings and events by correcting the funding account.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Sure, this is a technical amendment. We passed this bill in February for our sign language services, but we had the wrong account number, so this puts the correct. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. We passed this bill in February. This is for our sign language services, but the bill has the wrong account number, so in order to close on the contract, we need to correct the right account number.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 384, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention. Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to deferred papers, Bill 89.
Bill 89, resolution amending resolution 909 of 2023, entitled Resolution Authorizing a Fee Schedule for 2024, pursuant to Chapter 170 of the City Code to reduce the cost of employee parking.
Motion to hold 2 weeks.
Motion to hold 2 weeks and a second. All those in favor of a 2-week hold, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Bill will be held for 2 weeks. New papers, Bill 345.
Bill 345, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title II, Fiscal Article 1, Administration, Chapter 219, Operating Budget, by revising Section 219.03, Collaborative Budgeting Process, to require the City Controller to certify revenues and expenditures for 5 years rather than 1 year.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Second.
With discussion, Councilman Charlin.
Yes, I would like to call up Controller Heisler, who's here waiting for us. I also want to explain to members real quickly, I have an amendment here that you guys should have all received. I made some changes. I sent an email out to members yesterday and want to kind of explain that a little bit. We'll start by explaining what I'm looking to do here. So as it stands right now, the controller certifies our revenue for the next year and only for the next year. Because we do 5-year budgeting, I think it's really important that the controller certifies revenue for all 5 years. In addition, when I originally submitted this, I included language that would allow the controller to certify expenditures over the next 5 years. I don't think that what I said is or what I wanted to do was what the legislation came out to say. So I said to members, and I do want to change the expenditure portion of this bill for today. I'm going to come back with another plan of how we can have the controller certify projections in future years. I think that's important. But for today, I'm just going to have the controller certify revenues. So that's what the amendment is here. I think it might be helpful if we take the amendment first, and then we can get into talking with the controller about how we certify revenue. Is that okay?
Would you like to make a motion?
Motion to amend the bill.
Second.
Motion to amend Bill 345 in a second. Discussion. Councilman Charlin, do you have any further comments on the amendment?
No comments on the amendment. I think we can take the vote.
Okay, so we have Councilwoman Cale Smith followed by Councilman Wilson.
I just want to say thank you to Councilman Charlin, and also to the controller. But I'm glad that you're amending it, because I don't want to lessen council's authority. And that's the one thing I continue to say. I don't want to lessen council's authority. I think before I was council president, I was always adamant that council has a role to play here. But for me, the 5-year, certifying the numbers for 5 years, I want to just give you a chance to clarify. I think I've said before that the controller's office certified our last numbers. Can you clarify on that?
Are these on?
Yeah.
Yes, so we certify, the Controller Lamb I'm sorry. No.
You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Rachel Heisler. I'm the city controller. Thank you, Councilman Charlin.
We're a little out of order here.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So the process is, and the deputy controller and the controller participate in meetings with the Office of Management and Budget. Council's budget director has previously participated. And it's actually a back and forth ongoing dialogue that happens over the course of about 6 weeks around revenue projections for the subsequent year. And I think it's due to the finance chair on or before the 30th of September. And the amendment that Councilman Charland has proposed would just, instead of doing it for the subsequent year, it would be for all 5 years.
Right. No, I do understand that.
So our
I wanna talk about
certification
previously.
in 2023 was only for revenue projections in 2024, and that
For
was
the numbers you had in front of you at the
yes.
time.
And the letter that was submitted in last September basically said that, and this is what it has said for the last 4 years, that, because of the flexibility that the American Rescue Plan funds have given us, in totality, the revenue projections are accurate. And I do believe that in totality with the American Rescue Plan for this year, revenue is not a perfect match, but it is in totality pretty fair. My big concern that I've expressed to this body and to the mayor is for the subsequent 4 years after this year. And that's my big concern, is where we end at the end of 2028. And I think this amendment will allow a collaborative, ongoing conversation between the 3 branches of government to really paint an accurate position of where we'll be at the conclusion of the 5-year window.
And I'm going to add to that a little bit, because I think even though it's great that I like working with our budget director, I like our Finance and Law chairperson, those conversations need to include city council, and they should be directed by city council. It is a city council budget. And so it is our budget, it's the mayor's budget until once he sends it over to us, then it's ours. And so we have some responsibility here and some conversations that we should be having, whether or not we want to open the budget, not just for collective bargaining agreements and whatever, but for whatever, we wanted to. And we had a time frame, and I did speak to the chairperson then about it, but at the time we weren't sure what the numbers were and what was going on. So I think that at the time, there wasn't a need to open it. So that time elapsed. But
I do think per section 219 of city code, you only need 2 bodies of government to reopen the budget. It doesn't need to be unanimous. And that's what our office tried to instigate last month in March.
okay, so then that's good to know. I see our solicitor shaking his head. You're right. You must have read stuff. But anyway, I just want to thank you for that, because you really have been coming out, saying a lot more and being a lot more vocal. And I think people know who you are now, and know that we have a new controller in town, and you're really taking this job very seriously.
I just want to reiterate, too, that the concerns that I am seeing and that our office has been discussing with everybody here, the mayor's office, et cetera, it is not the byproduct of this administration. It is a byproduct of the pandemic. Every municipality in the country is dealing with changes to their downtown tax base. This is not unique to Pittsburgh. Buffalo and Cincinnati both reopened their budgets and are having those conversations with their residents, and that is purely what I'm trying to do, is start that conversation with city residents and look at what the next 5 years really is going to look like in terms of city revenue.
And for me, I'm not, I don't want to say anything about any administration. I think every administration, one of the things I do when I go out into the community with some of our students is I give them Monopoly money, and I try to give them a list of things that they want, and you show me what you want. And then I say, but then this just happened, this emerged. So then they have to, the kids play it out, and then they're frustrated at the end. And I said, well, now imagine being a mayor with 90 neighborhoods and trying to do that for everyone. So I would never say, I think that being a mayor or being a council person, any elected, who wouldn't want to serve all their residents and all their constituency the best that they can? I mean, to say anything otherwise is kind of crazy. But for me, I think that we have gotten in the habit of becoming a grant-making body, and I think that part of what we have to do is decide where those dollars should go. Should they go towards the things that we're responsible for doing? Councilman Coghill ran on, back to basics. Well, he won overwhelmingly because people want to see that. They want to see their streets paved. I can't tell you the list. I think our district is now the second highest for paving this year, and it's piddly. I mean, the amount of money is ridiculous, but we have the money, but we're giving it out in terms of grant funding. And if that grant funding was actually yielding results, I think everybody would be supportive. And I think in some cases, some people are, and some people are not. So I think a real evaluation of those programs, and honestly, I'd really like to see that be something that the foundations, do while we take care of the things we're elected to do and tasked to do for the city residents. So I think it's a whole conversation we all have to have together about, the grant funding. And I mean, all these organizations, there's a lot of them thinking they've been around for a long time. They have the ability to raise funds. I mean, some of them have proved it. Some have millions of dollars in their coffers. Some have almost nothing. So, I mean, I've watched Sister Mary, she received a Stop the Violence grant for Save a Life Today Pittsburgh. She got $40,000 when they first allocated the funding. She opened a center. She's serving people. She's doing all kinds of stuff. But you can see it. You can see what she's doing visibly there. But that's not the case for some of the other people that receive funding in my district. So I'm just going to say I just think there's just a broader conversation that needs to occur. But I'm appreciative of this amendment and this bill right now. So thank you. I'll wait and see the rest of the conversation. Make sure I'm still with it at the end. Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've always been interested in how we forecast revenue, because we're not allowing your current responsibilities and to agree on revenues or agree on the revenue forecast. So can you explain how we do that?
Sure. And to my knowledge, I don't know that there's ever been a disagreement on the subsequent year revenue certification between the Controller's Office and the Office of Management and Budget. I think what our office is looking ahead at particularly is the downtown reassessment process, what's happening with downtown property. That's my big concern. I think the deed transfer tax and the inverse relationship it has with interest earnings is of concern. I will share that we're in the process of ending the annual comprehensive financial report. The deed transfer tax brought in $12 million less last year than we anticipated. So I think looking at things like that and just having a conversation, the revenue conversation originates with OMB, and it's just, I think this legislation will allow a more robust back and forth looking at the 5-year window. And again, the projections come from the Office of Management and Budget, and that won't change. What will change is the conversation as we're looking 5 years out. Where is real estate going to be? What does downtown look like in 4 or 5 years? Obviously, that's impossible to predict. And we've been studying for the last few weeks from 2014 to today how forecasts have changed over time. So with 2014. What 2018 ended up being in that projection versus 2019. We're looking at 2019 and how the 2024 projections changed over that 5-year period. And obviously that was pretty drastic. I'm hopeful that we won't have another global pandemic that totally alters our landscape. But that's how I see it playing out. Is it just being a more robust conversation about past performance of revenue line items versus projections moving forward?
Well, I appreciate the info, but just want to dial into this for a second. So OMB presents the revenue forecast to you.
Yes.
But are you familiar with how that's calculated?
Yeah, and it is presented. I mean, the folks at OMB are wonderful.
I don't doubt that. But but how is the calculation made? Like, how do we predict how much money we would have next year? But really, how do we predict how much money we'll have in 5 years?
Part of it has to do with past performance. Part of it has to do with the global.
Like, are they looking at a chart and they're saying, well?
No, I mean, they use, I don't want to speak for OMB and how they come up with their modeling, but I mean, it's presented in a way, and I agree with Councilwoman Kell-Smith that it actually probably should be more inclusive of all of council, just so you guys know what you're voting on and understand how these calculations are initially discussed, and then, how things change over time. Because to OMB's credit, anything that Controller Lamb, my predecessor, of course, had expressed concern about was addressed through conversation for the subsequent year. And I think the goal of this is to have that back and forth for the following 4 years too. But OMB does all of the modeling and the initial presentation.
Yeah, so I'm definitely interested in Monk, so I'm happy to set up a meeting, and if other council, if we want to turn this into a briefing, I'm more than happy. Just always been interested in how that calculation's made.
I would love that.
Okay,
I don't
that's
know
just
if
kind of
Patrick's here, but yeah.
Not related to science, related to this, but also I could see that. Yeah, it's a pretty
absolutely.
long-winded conversation, so we'll leave it at that. But thanks for coming to the table, and looking forward to how this bill is actually put into action. So thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, Controller.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good, thanks. I will tell you, I welcome your oversight on the forecast for the next 5 years, I think. Is it what we're proposing? Okay. Yeah, I welcome that. I really want to know the raw numbers myself. So if I could just take you through a couple revenue streams.
Sure.
And tell me what I might be missing, and, But let me ask you this first. What was the revenue prediction for 24?
From last year's, the city expects to bring in $714 million in 2024.
$714 million.
That's according to, that's the target budget.
Okay. Do you know what the actual expenditures were for?
Our
the revenue was for 23.
That will be released with the annual
we don't know that
comprehensive.
then.
Yeah.
Okay,
So our annual audit, we create the financial record, annual financial record for the city, the annual comprehensive financial report. That'll be released on May 1st. And I'm happy.
So we'll have a real number as to 23 as to what we brought in.
Yes.
Right?
And I'm happy to do any meeting here before council after that release date. It's at 10 o'clock on the May 1st.
But the 714 for 24, that's just a projection.
Correct.
Right.
That was created. I don't know that this is from the December 18th version.
But you're already seeing pitfalls there because of obviously the facility usage tax and the reassessments going on downtown. So we have that projection was made figuring that those would not be altered, but now we know they will be.
Yes, that
Okay,
would be.
Good. Which adds up between those two.
Our office has calculated $12 million
$12 million
off the
annually.
swing. So a reduction in real estate tax being brought in addition to the refunds being paid out at this point. As
$12
of
million,
April,
is that just for 24 or
That's-
25 or?
That's as of April 5th, what we'll owe back this year in addition to not recouping or not collecting this year.
Yeah, so you see a $12 million gap there.
With
As
that
to what
line.
we projected.
Yes.
And is what the
Yes.
real number is going to be, at least on the surface anyway,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so revenues. What's our number one revenue driver? Property tax, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, property tax. Parking?
Parking is up there. EIT, the wage tax, is number 2.
Wage tax.
Payroll
okay.
prep is 3,
Okay.
and parking is 4.
Parking is
Or
4.
deed transfer. Projection,
Yeah, right,
deed
right,
transfer is for, I think it'll be 5 or 6 in 2023.
And then we got a host of smaller things, like the library tax, like the...
Library tax-
That's not counted in there?
No.
Oh, it is not?
No, that is paid back out and moved over. That's library tax.
Oh, I'm sorry. That wait. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna get mixed up here. Right. Okay. Library tax is an expense, or
It's
yeah,
not.
It's
doesn't
not.
count
Yeah.
as state
Okay.
operating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So we're talking about other little things. Permitting. Do we actually make an income?
Yeah.
Do we get revenue from permitting? I don't know.
Again, I don't have
think it's
our-
significant if it is.
17 million licensing and permitting.
Right. Right. So none of the federal money was included in the revenue stream.
It was. So
it was. Okay.
It's miscellaneous revenue because the American Rescue Plan money sits in a trust fund and then it's moved in to the operating budget. So it's in miscellaneous revenue, not intergovernmental revenue.
Okay. Understood.
So that counts. So for example, miscellaneous revenue is expected to be 46 million this year and drop to 370 million or to 370,000 next year.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
But that's the American
obviously,
Rescue Plan.
right. That's the plan, right? So I guess what I would like, Controller, is I mean, you're gonna work on a detailed cost, and it's
Revenue, not expenditures.
Right.
Yeah.
Revenue. I'm sorry, revenue for the next 5 years. This way, we know what we're projected to bring in, and a lot of that might be a guessing game because, like the property tax, you really can't evaluate.
Well, we
completely
know,
right now.
for example, the courts are still issuing
Right.
judgments on real estate appeals that were filed in 2022. So until the courts are caught up and that process is basically like happening in real time, I think it's realistic to continue to project
Okay.
the assessed value downtown continuing to decrease.
Right. Okay, so you're going to give a 5-year forecast as to what the city's bringing in. Right now, it's $714 million for 2024.
That's a projection.
Yeah, projection, right? And so we'll have a 5-year forecast. Now we know our expenditures because we approve them here at this table, but I can't tell you what that number is off the top of my head. I imagine we can get that number, right?
It's right there.
$685 million.
$685
Budgeted.
million. Okay, so we're flirting with $15, $25, $29 million kind of as a surplus there.
Yep.
Okay.
The operating result.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear our Finance Chair, Councilwoman Erica Strasburger, talk about pinch and pennies. I obviously think we need to take a hard look at a lot of different expenses that we're making, but until we actually get that forecast from you, that would be helpful. When do you expect that we'll get that?
Yeah, so again, this will be a collaborative process that's done with OMB. So this controller's office is not going to absorb forecasting. We're going to be certifying the revenue forecast, which is different. So we will be working with Patrick and with Deputy Mayor Pollack. But that process begins usually in late July, early August, and then revenue certification is due to the city clerk by the 30th of September. So it's basically a 2-month process. And like I said, in past years and past conversations that I've participated in, OMB has been very responsive to our questions, modified numbers based on our concerns. And again, my hope is with this change that just continues into year 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay. Well, listen, again, I welcome your projections and your oversight. I think it gives us a good roadmap as to what we're spending and taking a hard look at what we are paying for. So thank you for being here, Controller. Look forward to working with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilperson Warwick, followed by Councilwoman Gross.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for being here, Controller. I want to start by saying I really look forward to sort of like a new day of collaboration, right, between the Controller's Office and the administration and council. I think that this task force on city finances is a very good start, and I think that this sort of bakes that into the process, right? That collaboration as we figure out our budget for the coming year and then also for the years after that. With that in mind, I do see that Director Pollock is here. Would you like to come up just to sort of give your thoughts as well?
Good morning, Jake Pollack, Deputy Mayor and Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Thank you, Councilperson Warwick. First of all, just want to note that the administration's appreciation to Councilman Charlin for bringing this legislation forward. As relates to certification of revenues for 5 years, we're fully supportive. It's been our interpretation, actually, I can only speak for this during the Gainey administration, but it's been our interpretation in OMB that 219, as it's currently written, because of Section A, arguably already calls for the certification of the revenues for 5 years. So we have prepared projections on the basis that they are ready for certification for that period of time. But this clarification, making sure that the Controller's Office is under the same understanding and feeling empowered to examine them all for the purposes of certification, is a welcome addition to the process, and won't change anything about the way we prepare the numbers that we propose, but it can give you all greater certainty and clarity about what is actually being presented. So that's a welcome change from our point of view. A couple of just brief clarifications. It's the Department of Finance, not the Office of Management and Budget, that prepares the revenue projections. They are then presented by Finance to OMB and the Council Budget Office in the certification process. Certainly, we work closely with them on that, so I don't mean to, it's not a huge difference, but I bring that up only so that if you or any members are interested in a more detailed discussion about what goes into the revenue modeling, I would suggest Director Gula as the person to speak to about that. The models themselves are based on a variety of standardized data sources that comply with generally accepted accounting principles, forecasts of market activity, where we have our own data on past collections and past trends. Those are incorporated, or in the absence of something like that, like when we're trying to estimate market activity of one kind or another, there are standard data sets that most institutions like us rely on, and that's what Director Gula includes. I'd also note we take a fairly small c conservative view of potential revenue growth, right? So we typically aim to underestimate potential growth in order to ensure that particularly as we get further out into the out years, so that we're not counting on revenue that doesn't materialize. Significant market changes can obviously impact that, but under normal circumstances, we kind of aim to undershoot so that we, as we get closer to an out year, we have more rather than less flexibility. And then just one final note, as it pertains to reopening the budget, Section 219 states that any change to the revenue, that the original certification of the revenue forecast requires the agreement of OMB, the Council Budget Office, and the Controller's Office on finances projections. It says that any change to the forecast within the budget cycle requires just two branches, so the administration and either the Council Budget Office or the Controller's Office. But that's separate than what was discussed earlier in terms of reopening the budget. After 5 weeks into the fiscal year, only the mayor can initiate a reopening of the budget by sending a resolution to council. So while the certification process involves multiple branches for the entire fiscal year except the first 5 weeks, it can only be done through executive action.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. I'm supportive of this bill, so.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was following along on Zoom, so I was able to hear, I think, most of the discussion. So thank you for being here today. I noted several topics that I would like to kind of ask some follow-up questions. I'm glad you brought up the real estate transfer tax. It was one of the ones that I was here on council to vote for the increase. And we had robust discussion at the time. In fact, it took almost a year to make the decision to put the additional millage on. And the concern at the time was whether there were loopholes. And so I'll return to that. Secondly, I am interested in I think the words that the deputy mayor just used was kind of like preparing the revenue projections so that they're like submitted for certification, something like that. I've like kind of forgotten exactly the turn of phrase you used so they're like certifiable projections, but then they're not certified, is what I'm gathering. And so maybe I'll just start there. So, Director Pollack, I heard you say that your Department of Finance and OMB have already prepared the current 5-year projections to the level of certification or something like that. Could you reframe that or remind me what you said?
Sure. So 21903A, which is a subsection of the section of code that's being amended here, includes the 5-year forecast in what is required to be submitted to the by finance to OMB, the council budget office, and the controller.
Okay.
We've taken the interpretation that means that the agreement among those 3 bodies encompasses the 5-year projection. But I don't disagree with Controller Heisler that Controller Lamb always took the position that he was only being asked or required to certify the next year's projections.
I'm not sure that's how you said it, though. So you said like that your 5-year projections, not that you sent them, is that you sent them, you didn't just send a number. Here's the number for 2027. You sent them in a way that could be, that is the same way you're doing the 1-year projections.
That's correct.
So I'm imagining in my head like footnotes and addendum and like, where did we get this number? Like what is certifiable? What is the thing that is that you're asking to be certified?
The projections are sent in a format that shows how they are calculated and includes notes and data sources. And that is true for the entire 5-year projection. So there is nothing, what I was trying to communicate is there is nothing about what we already prepare and submit that would make it, that would be a barrier to looking not just at year 1, but also year 2,
I'm going to
3,
say
4.
I wasn't asking you to expound. I wanted to like remember how you said it.
Got it.
And so I think how you said it and how I heard it was that these are already ready to be certified. It's just that no controller is certifying them.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not like the numbers for 2027. It's just like, oh, hey, we think it's going to be 750 million. There's literally the exact same, again, I look in my like kind of like academic lingo, it'd be like footnotes and like, the sources for every calculation have already been submitted.
That's correct.
It's just that nobody actually did certification.
Yes.
Our previous interpretation of this is that it had only been required for the subsequent year.
Got it. Okay, so it's all like you've already done your homework.
Yes.
There's no change or additional burden on the administration.
There is not any change or additional burden on the administration, the Department of Finance, encompassed in this bill. No.
Thank you. Okay, so that's helpful. And then, so let me go back to the real estate transfer tax. Somewhere in this phone with 70,000 emails or so of 10 years of emails was research my staff did. I feel like it was early in the pandemic, looking at properties, significantly large commercial properties, not technically downtown, but maybe one of them is in Second Ward. In the Strip District, that definitely changed ownership.
If it's my understanding that if a building is owned by a LLC company, whatever, and the company is bought or sold, ownership of that building would change because the business owner has changed.
And did not pay the real estate transfer taxes.
Because the property is owned by the LLC, and that is the deed. That would be the deed transfer.
Okay, so the cork factory, once again, in the last 5 years, and I haven't looked recently, and I will look again, sold, I think, post-2020 without paying real estate transfer taxes. And it's a very large building with about, 400 apartments. And I specifically call it out because when we were debating the increase to the real estate transfer tax, which isn't actually a mill, it's a percent, that was the example that the finance chair Rudiak gave. Mm-hmm. She said, previous to 2017, the cork factory in the Strip District, which at the time we didn't have like dozens of other new apartment buildings full of 400 apartments, was sold and didn't pay the real estate transfer tax legally because of a loophole at the state. And we had robust debate about this again for months. I feel like it went on for a full year. And we were sure that was a loophole that had been closed, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember several of us on council, I think myself included, because it was really, in the end, I did vote for it, but I was really worried about this exact thing. I said, they'll just find another loophole. And so just to explain further, when you see an LLC as the owner, and that kind of started in the larger buildings, but we now have been talking about this at council, it's including hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of single-family homes across the city. It is legal to buy and sell the LLC. And that means that the property, the assets of the LLC, whether it's a pencil, a desk, or a home, or a 400-unit apartment building, the ownership is transferred with the company. And so technically, the deed didn't transfer because the same name is on the deed. Every one of us can go on our phones or on a website and look at the county real estate portal, and you'll see the name of the owner. And so if the name of the owner doesn't change, we're not collecting real estate transfer tax. The second building was a $30 million project in Highland Park, which is the one large tall apartment building that you can see up by the entrance to the zoo, which is Highland House. And it transferred, I think, ownership twice. And and this is how I got on this trail. Again, it was during COVID when we had, there was construction at the building and we were getting a lot of complaints. It was terrible. Repeated fire alarms and residents having to walk down 20 flights of steps and back up again in a weekend. Elevators getting stuck, people having to be pulled out, just, no air conditioning when it was 100 degrees outside. And so, of course, I wanted to call the owner. And my staff couldn't find the owner. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find the owner? What do you mean? Maybe this is like right before the pandemic, so I'm picturing us in the office. And they were like, oh, wait, the owner that had been the owner for 50 years or something was, okay, wait, no, we think they got bought by someone in Chicago. Oh, wait, that company got sold to somebody in Texas. Oh, wait, and so it took us quite a while to track down the owner or property manager, to have someone to file a citation or, haul in front of PLI or to call and yell at. And none of those transfers pay the real estate transfer tax. And so it is a significant part of our revenue. And I'm curious, who is paying it. I have found some examples of who is not. And I would love to kind of take a global assessment of where are the weaknesses. And here's the fear, right? I'm sorry, I can see you're ready to answer. That if people with lawyers are able to get out of it too easily, then the burden is being shouldered by who we didn't want to shoulder it, which is, our first-time home buyer or our kind of lower and moderate income households.
You're totally correct. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know how to address that legally, but I totally agree with you, and I think it's a flaw with the real estate transfer tax or deed transfer tax, whatever you want to call it, as it's currently written. And I totally, you're right.
I just couldn't resist. It's been bothering me, and so
No,
we're
it's
talking
fair.
about it. So I really wanted the public to kind of understand, especially because I just did a rule of council I think a week ago about how more and more private equity companies and real estate investment trusts and corporate remote corporate entities are buying more of our single family homes. And I was speaking on a panel this weekend on housing with a Pitt professor, Sabine Dietrich, who's a longtime social researcher on Pittsburgh, and she put a map up on the wall. She and Chris Bream, an economist at Pitt, have isolated data to just single-family homes and then looked at those transactions, and they're starting to map where there's the most, I'll say, corporate plunder. I think the name of the panel was Plunder of Housing or something like that. So, and in the city boundaries, there's a lot just outside of our perimeter that they found so far. And within the city, it was south of the river. So it was really District 3 and District... I was really surprised, District 2, 3, and 4. I'm thinking about I'm not going to motion for a post agenda today, but I think it's really something that it's great that we've got the researchers who are kind of putting more local numbers. We've read the kind of, other cities' research. So we've been talking about that so much.
Yeah.
And so the more LLCs there are, hypothetically, or you would think by extension, that it's going to impact even single-family home transfers of real estate.
It is now already, and you're correct that there's a concentration of that in the neighborhoods south of the Monongahela River. It's not by any means isolated to there, but there's a disproportionate, I would say, share of that. And what you're pointing to, Councilwoman, is the tactic of creating what is often called a single-purpose LLC, right? So Jake Incorporated wants
234 South Milva LLC,
Right.
236
Right.
South Milva
Right.
LLC.
Wants
Literally,
to-
they're per address.
Right. If wanting to own, if Jake LLC wants to own 123 Grant Street, rather than buying it, it would create 123 Grant Street LLC and buy the building. And then if Jake LLC wanted to sell it to Deb LLC, instead of selling the building and the deed, it would sell 123 Grant Street LLC. We are seeing that where that started with larger buildings, we're now seeing it with portfolios of smaller buildings, right? Traditionally single-family homes will be owned in that manner and then traded in that fashion. And that also, you mentioned how that maps to other trends. It maps to the increase in the proportion of Pittsburgh residents who are renters versus owners, which I think 2 years ago was the first time that I might have the date wrong, but it was within the last 5 years that calculation flipped from majority ownership to majority rental, and this trend is part of that.
Some of us represent neighborhoods that have majority renters and have for a long time. Been talking about that since the outset of our conversations about affordable housing and what that means, especially that, and I'll just, by extension, I'm getting off the topic, I acknowledge, so I'm gonna bring it back, but that many of our neighborhoods are majority renter without any multifamily apartment buildings. So I'm going to say that again because it's unique to Pittsburgh. It's not Las Vegas, it's not Orlando, it's not Atlanta, right? When you look at the rooftops in Bloomfield going across the Bloomfield Bridge and you see not a single apartment building, remember 65% of Bloomfield are renters. So those single family structures, I've been saying this, council members that have been on council with me for 10 years have heard me say this constantly and consistently, right? That's where the renters are in the single family structure. So the single family structure that's 3 apartments that gets flipped or bought by a corporate landlord that's evicting people, right? You've lost 3 households of renters. And that's how Lawrenceville filled these chambers advocating for inclusionary zoning, because they lost probably 1,000 of their low-income neighbors. That were Section 8 vouchers, 300 family network alone in the Somali Bantu population that were entirely displaced as those single family structures flipped back to single family, and those apartments were lost. So to bring it back to revenue, I'm concerned that that will also be taking a hit. We have been fortunate that real estate transfer tax has been so high. And it's deeply concerning that there's more and more share of our housing stock, either in large multifamily or in single families portfolios, as Director Polly put it, may not be paying that. And so that's one of the revenue streams that I'm concerned about. So I'm glad that the administration has already done its homework and all of the 5-year projections are always ready to be certified. And so that this is not a overly due burden. And we could and should continue to look at what are the measures that other cities are doing, either to plug holes or state governments are doing to plug these kinds of real estate holes. I know we're tracking a number of the legislation at the state and federal level that's attacking parts of this problem, either with transparency or accountability or limits, and new authorities to do this kinds of apply taxes where there are loopholes now. And so I'll stop there, Madam Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
May I just, anything that our office, like Councilperson Warwick said, this is a new era of leadership, and I want to be a partner, particularly as it relates to predatory behavior, with whether it's via landlords or anything like that. We have access to data that you might not even know we have. Any conversation that we can be included in, if there's stuff we don't have access to, I will tell you, and we can figure out a way to get it and obtain it. But I'm really, I'm excited that, I'm here now, and I'm thrilled to work with anyone on council and in the administration to make sure that we're protecting our most vulnerable neighbors. So thank you, and thank you for your comments on that.
And it would require state level action in order to address the specific loophole you pointed out about deed transfers versus transfers of LLCs, because that's the level where the appropriate regulations there live. So just an excellent point there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments for first round? For second round, Councilman Charlin.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. I kind of screwed up the process there. I didn't realize we were going to have discussion at that moment. That was me not realizing. I wanted to vote on the amendment first. So I apologize that I didn't get to talk about my bill first here. So where the rationale for why I think this is so important is especially as I'm kind of digging more into understanding our finances and understanding our roles and procedures here, it's become clear to me that the controller's office is sometimes misunderstood in your day-to-day role and how we can work with the controller's office. Again, I know there's new leadership here, but one of the conversations that you and I have had has been about, the controller's office has a laser focus and handles day-to-day operations of our expenditures. But the controller's office doesn't have a day-to-day role in our revenue and the money that's coming in the door. And why I think this is so important is I want to make sure that you have kind of you're never going to be the tax collector.
Correct.
But you are the person that can say, does this revenue make sense? What are we budgeting appropriately? Because ultimately you're the one that's seeing the money leave the council chambers, and leave this building here. So I thought that was, surprising to me to learn that you only look or had only been looking at next year's revenue. And that was the impetus for this bill over here. You mind talking a little bit about, what you think in terms of the money that's coming in the door? Well,
I mean, I'll explain that duties are intentionally segregated, right? Money in comes to the treasurer for the city, Director Gula, and money out is the city controller's office. So our role in terms of revenue has traditionally been the certification, and I think this is recent since 2004, which was initially required by Act 47 regulators, and this body later adopted. But our role with revenue has traditionally been that revenue certification. Given our home rule charter responsibility is serving as the fiscal watchdog for the city. And given the position we're in and that role in revenue certification, I think I've opted to take a more active approach, particularly just given this environment. But I want to compliment the treasurer, the director of OMB, the CFO for the city, because I've participated in now 3 of these conversations as deputy controller, and the process is actually quite collaborative. It's not like they come in with numbers and we sign a piece of paper. I mean, there's a back and forth, there are several meetings. It's not intended to be, and I don't think it has been, at least from my perspective, contentious. I mean, it is like, wait, where did you get this number? And whether it's Patrick or Jake or Jen or Director Gula, CFO Cornell, or Deputy Mayor Pollack, sorry, they answer us and they explain to Councilwoman Gross's question, like they will go through and say, well, this is how we calculated this. And then we'll have back and forth again 2 weeks later, and things have been revised, altered, et cetera. So I don't view this as at all being anything other than an enhancement upon the relationship that already exists as it relates to revenue certification. I will reiterate that our view of this current law is that only the subsequent years was required. It's great to hear that you guys are ready, and it's great, it's wonderful. But I intend for this to be not like our office coming in and saying, no, you're wrong. We do inform each other throughout this process.
Yeah, and so one of the questions as I was starting this bill here was, what happens if the controller doesn't certify our revenue? And as I've kind of asked that to a variety of different people, the answer is that wouldn't happen. That can't happen because this is not a stamp of approval. This is a discussion, and you're having a discussion back and forth. It might be helpful for us as council. You know, the certification, as far as we see it, is a letter on the controller's letterhead in the beginning of our budget.
Right.
It might be helpful to have a more robust letter there of these are the things that we fought about. These are, or not
questions. Yeah.
Fought about, and these are the things that we're concerned about moving forward. I think that would be helpful for us. I know that you put out reports in a variety of ways answering that question throughout the whole year.
Absolutely.
But that might be something that would be helpful for us is to see, like, this was the contentious part of this discussion, and this is, we are certified, but we are watching X. I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, and I think Councilman Wilson suggested, but like an ongoing throughout that process, whether it's briefing council or however I don't know what that would look like in August and September, but I have no problem having that conversation, whether I'm called here upon revenue certification or what have you, but I welcome the dialogue. I think it's actually really healthy and important because I think everybody, we're approaching this with the best of intentions, and my perspective is that I want our input to be helpful towards the, and contribute towards the financial health of the city, and to make sure that everybody is working towards that.
And so I know I am jumping the gun on this, but in future years, in relation to the budget situation that we're in right now, is there anything that's jumping out at you that you want to acknowledge is something that you might be having some concerns about right now?
I continue to be very worried about the future of the facility usage fee. 2 courts have struck it down. I respect and appreciate the briefing that we got on Friday, that the task force received on Friday about where that stands legally. But it worries me to continue to count on that revenue year after year. I do think our finances were in a period of contraction, and deficits are okay if there's a plan for things to come back. So the facility usage fee is my big concern. Real estate taxes are my big concern, and just the inverse relationship getting to zero with the deed transfer tax. And I understand there are obviously loopholes with that, and if there's state law, it doesn't seem to change. So is there anything we can do as a city, and whether it's even just doing a report on how many LLCs have been bought and sold? I don't know that answer, but I'm sure through the county real estate office, if a property's in the city of Pittsburgh, we can do a report on LLCs that have been bought and sold. Yeah, and just ward by ward or or neighborhood by neighborhood and see. And again, I don't know how that information is broken down by the county. I don't know that the city's Department of Finance collects it, because it would be done at the county level because they handle those transfers. But those are my primary issues of concern, but primarily real estate facility usage.
So you mentioned the facility usage fee, and I obviously share your concern with what we're going to do with the facility usage fee. I appreciate that you may have had a briefing and certainly know more about where we might be on that. But I'm curious, can you tell me, Director, could you tell me what the plan is with the facility usage fee?
Sure. So the facility usage fee was challenged by a group of plaintiffs, essentially comprised of the players' associations for the major sports leagues, arguing that it is unconstitutional under the Pennsylvania Constitution. The city has defended it at both the Common Pleas and Commonwealth Court level. In both cases, those courts found against the city. We currently have a petition pending in front of the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to take up the case. Under Pennsylvania municipal law, claims against a municipality in these circumstances are automatically stayed when they're pending appeal. So when we appealed from the Common Pleas to Commonwealth Court level, the decision was stayed. When we we were unsuccessful at the Commonwealth Court, because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court doesn't automatically take up appeals, they have to consider whether they'll take up appeal. There was a period of about 6 weeks between the Commonwealth Court determination and the filing and acceptance of our petition to the Supreme Court, where there was no stay in effect, and so we ceased collection of the fee. Once the petition to the Supreme Court was filed and we received confirmation from the Supreme Court that it was in process and thus a stay was in place, we resumed collection of the fee as of April 1st, so as of the beginning of the second quarter. We could have done it a few days before that, but for bookkeeping purposes, it was simpler to make it line up with the beginning of the quarter. The reason we're doing that is one, because there is a stay in place pending the Supreme Court's consideration of the case. And second, in fact, in preliminary discussions, the Supreme Court asked us why we didn't resume collection as soon as we put in the petition. So they're clearly under the expectation that we would continue to collect during a stay. Recent cases that have been appealed to the Supreme Court similar to this can take 2 years to reach conclusion. So we believe that it's very reasonable to expect that we'll be continuing to collect under this stay for potentially that long. We're also confident in our case and in our ability to ultimately prevail. Again, we are operating from the point of view that the fee, at least in some form, potentially modified by an ultimate decision at the Supreme Court or a settlement with the other parties once we get into that case, will continue into the future. And so that will be reflected in our forecasts as they are presented to other branches for consideration later this year. And then obviously subject to discussion as the controller just described. Yeah, apologies. Yeah, that's where things stand with the fee right now.
So I guess I have the question, why are we, well, I'll start with this. Why are we confident in our case here if we have lost it, in the two branches beforehand, also knowing that other cities have lost this case outside of the Commonwealth? That respectively would probably be a question for the law department and probably an executive session so as to not compromise our arguments. Okay. And then the other question I have is it prudent to still budget to spend that $4.5 million if we very well might be having to refund not just that money, but also refunds that, include previous years? I've heard different numbers of what that might look like in terms of a refund. If we'd refund the whole thing, if we'd refund 6 years, 3 years. But is it we don't show that anywhere in our budget that we would refund that. So but we're budgeting right now that we will be not just collecting it, but that will be keeping us above our fund reserve balance. Is it prudent to still view our budget that way?
Again, we believe we'll still be collecting the fee. So to budget for refunds we don't anticipate paying, I'm not sure how we would, from an accounting perspective, present that. I understand your concern. As you pointed out, the proceeds of the fee are a relatively small amount, right? Roughly 1% of the overall operating budget, and less than 1% of overall revenues. So, in comparison to the surplus in excess of budget that we generated last year, for example, it would be a small. Would not be a significant adjustment in any recent fiscal year. I'm not concerned about the impact of interruptions in collections, but we continue to forecast it primarily based on the arguments we're presenting to the court. But that's, again, a discussion that we're certainly welcome in the development of future forecasts and that we can have in the context of the 2025 budget. The likelihood of refunds is also very much subject to the resolution by the Supreme Court, as the plaintiffs only petitioned for refunds for themselves, meaning that the actual entities. So I don't believe there's any scenario where automatic refunds to all payers would be ordered. There may be an application process, or we may not be required to pay refunds at all and simply be enjoined from collecting the tax into the future. So that's a very much unsettled question at this point.
Sure, I guess, and I understand that, we're talking 4.5. I think it does increase to somewhere around 5 million in future projections here. But we're also razor thin in terms of where we are in relation to our fund balance. So, we don't have 4.5 million in wiggle room there. And so if we're also assuming 4.5 this year, 4.5 next year, 4.5 in the following year, and we're at 10% of that 10% number, we don't have that brings us below 10%. So I guess my next question here is, what happens legally? We have to stay above 10% in the fund balance ratio. Legally, what happens if we go below?
Legally, we're required to present and approve budgets that maintain that percentage. That's and we would address that by generating operational savings in the course of a budget year if we were headed towards a situation where that weren't going to be maintained, and then account for it in the subsequent year's budget and 5-year plan. So, for example, the budget sets, the appropriation bill passed by council sets the maximum allowable amount that can be expended on line items. It's certainly not a requirement that we spend up to that maximum if we don't need to, or if due to revenue underperformance, we don't have the available funds. So in the course of any fiscal year, the Office of Management and Budget, working in collaboration with the department, with all departments, can reduce expenditures below the allotted amount in order to keep the actual spending for the year within budget. And that's what we would look to do. That's why we look at general fund revenues every week and track them to the budget projections. That's why we look at cash flow every day to make sure that we have enough money in the bank to meet the scheduled expenditures. It's consistent with the executive and administrative authority of the administration to take the budget as our maximum allocation, but then ensure that we're staying within that budget and under that budget, if possible, just from a prudence perspective, and if needed, in exigent circumstances. And then we always have the opportunity to make adjustments as we head into future fiscal years, right? We have the reserve fund has a balance that's twice what it was in 2019 today, right? And so but I'm not suggesting we would dip into the reserve fund. But what I mean is that gives us year over year opportunity. Like when we were passing a budget for next year before this year is over, funds that we don't spend, even if budgeted, in the third and fourth quarter, rolling over into the reserve fund at the end of the year can preserve a balance.
So I appreciate that, as that was your answer to how we will not go below 10%.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, what happens if we do go below 10%?
The requirement, again, is that the budget that is passed does not, by its structure, place us below 10%. There's no legal requirement that not actually happen as a result of operations. Just as we're required to pass a budget that does not produce a deficit still may occur, right? That expenditures can exceed revenues in a given year. A company, a city, an individual, right, can budget to have extra money left over at the end of the year and still end up in the hole. So as a legal matter, nothing would happen automatically because we went below 10%, even though the budget that was presented showed us not doing so. That would be a matter for council to discuss when we bring the next year's budget proposal, and I would expect a great deal of scrutiny on us if that happened when the budget projection had showed otherwise, right? And so I would anticipate that council would take the fact that underperformance had occurred into consideration when considering the subsequent year's budget. But yeah, that requirement is on what is adopted.
So what's important for us is that we pass a spending plan that is keeps us above 10%.
Yes.
It's less important that we are actually serious about staying above that 10%. It's not that the number needs to be above 10%.
It's not less important.
Yeah.
What the code requires only speaks to the what is appropriated, but it is equally, if not more important, that we actually do it. It's just that's not the trigger that's established in code.
I think that's my questions here for the second round here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And just before we move on to the next council member, as a reminder, or if I haven't had a chance to talk to you individually yet, the Joint Task Force on City Finances is already discussing holding a number of briefings and a series of post agendas. And actually, I would welcome a member calling for a post agenda at the end of the meeting just to be able to have that called so we can work collaboratively to set that date when appropriate, where we can have a fulsome discussion about all the items that we're starting to get to today. So as a reminder, Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I first want to start, Councilman Charlene, thank you for, I love that you come in very fiscally responsible. I love when you and I talk about the budget and the shortfalls that we may see together. And which brings me to, you asked the exact same questions I was really going to ask to you, Mr. Pollack, was where is the confidence that facility usage tax is going to come out in our favor when we've been voted down by 2 courts already? I wish I shared your optimism there, but I do not. And the other part of that is, so we started collecting that in April again, correct?
Just to clarify, the facility usage fee works out to be about 3%. During the first quarter, we were collecting the standard city wage tax. So we were collecting 1%, and then we went back to collecting the facility usage fee, or 3%, as of April 1st. So we were collecting about 33% of what we were projecting during the first quarter. And as a result, we are, our present general fund revenue reports do show us under projection for that revenue source for that reason.
Okay, and we've been collecting that tax for how many years? 20?
Roughly, yeah.
20 years? Okay. And you say it's kind of undetermined as to if the Supreme Court rules against the city of Pittsburgh. It's unclear as to what we will have to pay back, how much we will have to pay back. Is that right?
Typically the most aggressive look back period is what it's generally referred to, but refund period would be 3 years in a situation like this, so not the entire.
So going back 3 years.
From the date of filing, which
Correct.
is 2022.
Yes.
So 2019 to today.
Understood.
Correct. That is.
And annually, that is roughly how much?
$5 million
$5
to give you a round number.
So we're looking at, if we lose a possible, if they go back 3 years, $15 to $20 million possibly that we would have to pay back if it rolls in our favor.
Closer to 30 if you think about 2022 being the date of filing and you would include 2024.
Yeah. So I look at the reassessments going on downtown, and we are forced to pay those back. We were unfairly charging them tax, I guess, is really what it's been deemed by the courts. So we're forced to pay that back, and we've paid back over $8 million.
No, we paid back about $3 million.
Okay.
I think that's this year. And Controller, correct me if I'm getting, but the difference that you're citing, I believe, is between what the county the county assessment office has reported as the outcomes of its adjudications, which is more than what they have actually formally transmitted to us, and this thus entered the queue to be repaid. So while we don't think we dispute that there are more cases,
we can anticipate
something on the order of, I believe it's $7.2 million.
As of April 5th, the city owes $7.2 million in real estate
$7.2 million, and there's no payment plans or anything of that nature. When we owe that money back, and we have to actually cut a check out of our operating budget, correct?
We pay it out of trust fund, and it's based on the tax collections in the year in which the refund was owed. So, for example, there are still 2023 funds in the budget that we would pay the 2023 portion out of, and et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really not comfortable with. I don't know how you plan to do it. And let me just ask you this, Controller. What the direct or what Mr. Pollock had said, what their forecast is, as Councilwoman Gross said. Almost certified you have the internal numbers. What you see the difference would be, at least on the face of it, would be the reassessments and the facility usage tax.
Yeah, and our office is also concerned about deed transfer. It isn't something that we've brought up because I do think it's probably temporary for this year, last year, this year, and next year. I do think the market will change, and which would reduce interest earnings, but increase the deed transfer tax, hopefully back to projected levels.
Okay, so outside of those three revenue sources, anything else sticking out to you? Anything else that you... So basically what you would do, I guess our deputy mayor is going to turn over your projections, and you're going to just examine them, factoring in these three, at least, reductions that we're going to see, and look for anything else, correct? You're going to audit.
Yes,
right.
yeah,
So if I may, the current certified projections were prepared last summer and certified last fall. I also would agree that when we present new numbers now with the results of more cases having been adjudicated and more current data on some of the other revenue streams, we will also show them reducing. So I don't believe we disagree about that.
So you're going to turn new numbers into the controller before she does her audit. We're going to do a fresh look at numbers.
We always initiate that process.
Okay,
I think that
because it will be skewed from last year.
Yeah, we won't be reusing the numbers that were presented last year. We change them every year when we do a new model.
Yeah.
I think the point I would simply make is that the only reason in our interpretation to reopen the budget is if we need to increase the bottom line spending number, right? To say we actually need to spend more than you approved previously. If we need to spend if we think we need to spend less than was previously approved, we can do that through the implementation of expenditures rather than having to change the budget. If we need to move funds between departments in a revenue neutral way, we can do that through interdepartmental transfer legislation that you would see. So I think our point is not that these changes are happening. We're continuing to discuss and work through our different interpretations of the scale of the challenge, but that is has been a fruitful and I think positive conversation. As it relates to reopening the budget, we there are no changes that we anticipate that would increase the budgetary bottom line spend, and that's why we have not initiated a reopening of the budget so far.
But when we do, we'll have to decrease the revenue projections.
But we can
Probably.
we can do that as part of the normal passage of the FY25 budget. There's not necessarily a reason to do that mid-year because we're not looking to increase the overall amount.
Understood. So let me ask you this, and maybe you do or do not know the answer. If we decided not to collect a facility usage tax, okay, and the Supreme Court rules in the city of Pittsburgh's favor, is there a time frame? Whereas can we now collect it if we didn't?
We can't go back and collect it.
We can't go back.
Right.
It's a fee.
Right. It's a fee. So we can't go back and collect it if we weren't collecting it during the consideration of the case.
Got it.
So collecting it during consideration of the case is prudent because as the case is stayed, there's no legal
Sure.
barrier to
So we're taking it as revenue, but in essence, it may end up as debt. If the Supreme
once again, there are a wide array of possibilities depending on what the Supreme Court were to decide.
Okay. Well, I look forward to the two of you getting together and giving us what you feel the real honest projections are for our revenue over the next 5 years. And to one final point, Councilwoman Gross brought up, I did not realize that if you buy an LLC, you do not pay the transfer tax. It explains the LLCs working in my neighborhood, same person owns. Now here's what I'm saying. And I was wondering, what's that?
I said Cog Hill LLC.
Yeah. So no, it explains. I was wondering. I didn't realize this until today, but the one person I know owns actually over 50 homes in just one single neighborhood, under like 7 LLCs, and I'm like, well, what? This guy got so many companies. So you're right, it's a loophole. It's obvious now to me, but yeah, that's and then it gets passed on to the middle income people who actually buy homes and sell the homes that they want to live in. So that's a shame that they're finding that loophole, but that's private business and that's what they will do. So, and if it has to be done on a state level, we'll all go to Harrisburg someday and make a journey and lobby against it. How's that?
Yeah, just to be clear, when I say it has to be done at the state level, I mean that the rules governing what enables us to collect the real estate transfer tax are set there, and the laws governing the practices of LLCs are set there. There may be a local solution that we could discuss. I'm not aware of one right now, but I just want to draw that distinction.
I get it. I mean, it makes it, if they have the attorneys and it's cheaper for them to do the LLCs and avoid that D-transfer tax, that's what they're going to do. It's kind of the way private practice works. I mean, we have to accept that. So, again, thank you, Councilman Charland, for bringing this to us. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kale Smith.
I just want to, I feel like I have to kind of defend Jen Gould a little bit, just to say that she answers to, several people. So I don't ever want to say that Jen Gould is doing something without some supervision. And I just want to make sure I know there was no intention to say anything negative, but I had heard, her name a few times. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Jen, I will reiterate on behalf of our office that
She's
the director
amazing.
of finance, the director of OMB, the CFO are all excellent to work with and have been very responsive as we've sought this new era of.
She is, and this is not my forte, so I'm going to stay out of this conversation, but I will say that I think she's been amazing in that position.
I agree.
That's all. Thank you.
100% agree as well.
Thank you.
Jen was, we were unbelievably lucky as an incoming Gainey administration to have her in the deputy director role, and to have her serve as acting director at the beginning of the administration, which is reflected in her appointment to be permanent director.
Right.
So yeah,
So
we're
thank you
very
for
happy
that.
to have
Thank
her.
you for that move. Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you. Councilwoman Gross.
Just briefly, Councilwoman, I think when you were out of the room, Councilwoman Smith, that we established that, in fact, Director Gula has already created the certifiable reports for the next 5 years. It's just that nobody looked at them and certified them. So again, she's already done all of the homework for 5 years forward.
It would be great for council to see those projections.
Yeah. So, well, we see the bottom number in the budget.
It would be good
But
to
she
see
has
all the
literally
numbers.
created all of the footnotes, documentation, and everything that the controller will need. she's already done all the homework. So
Can I just want to say, I think this is part of what the problem is. The communication between us needs to be more, and I think that we're trying to do a lot of that. And I don't want to say this is about you, because you always do communicate with us, Director Pollock. But I will say that I think in general, we all need to communicate better. It needs to be all a council at different times. And I think that, for me, it was, I just want to make sure that Jen Gola, Director Gola, has been great. But I do think that some of the numbers would be great to see, all of the numbers, not just the bottom line numbers, and to know that those numbers even were in existence.
And they were submitted to our city council budget office.
Yes,
So
all of that data.
They have it in hand.
That's
Okay.
correct. All of
Did
that
you
is.
share it with us?
All of that is including that documentation is provided to the council budget office as part of the certification process. I can't speak to the internal circulation within council afterward, but and I don't mean that as any. I'm not making any assertions about the council budget office in saying that, but we because they are the entity charged with receiving that information on behalf of council, that's who we send it to.
But I think maybe that's the problem, right there. Maybe you need to communicate with council, send the numbers to council and copy our director. He's not the decision maker here, we are. So it'd be good for us to have those numbers. So in the future, I'm going to suggest that we all have, the information. Because that, to be honest, that has been the way it has been, and it doesn't work. I mean, that's one of the changes we wanted to make going forward, was that we made sure that council was the one making decisions, not necessarily our budget office.
Yeah,
and he agrees with that, so
I'm not suggesting that you make the decision. I'm simply suggesting that it's up to council to determine how to share that information within itself once we've transmitted it.
Okay, so I'm going to say, please transmit it to council. That's all. Thank you.
I have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you.
So and again, and that's according to chapter 219.03.
Correct.
Which is a council ordinance that council created. I'm having my staff look up when we created those requirements for reporting, which I suspect was in the Ravenstall administration as we were entering Act 47, but I don't remember particularly.
I believe it was actually adopted into code as we were exiting Act 47. It was part of
2016?
Yeah, it was part of the package of legislation where some of the requirements, like the 5-year budgeting process that had been required by Act 47, were adopted into city code so that they would outlive Act 47. So while it was going on during Act 47, that was as a state requirement.
Right.
And then as the city was preparing to exit Act 47, it was adopted into code.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. And so again, this process is in city council's control because these, the controller and finance and OMB are acting according to city council ordinance. So we can work on that moving forward. I think there was a follow-up question. Now, I've gotten distracted because Councilwoman Smith kind of stole the floor when I was speaking, and now I can't remember where I was going with it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had the floor. Acknowledged by the chair. I'm sorry.
No, you did it. It was my turn. Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
I took it back again.
Did I? I'm sorry.
So now I've lost my train of thought again with the heckler to my
You're
left.
welcome.
This is the third week in a row, the third standing committee in a row. The Councilwoman Smith has heckled me off camera, and now I've lost my train of thought. So thank you, Madam Chair. That's it.
Let me just say, with Councilwoman Harris, I used to shut her mic off. So you're too far away.
All right. So we've exceeded, I think, a second round, and seeing no further comments. Councilman? Okay. Seeing no further comments, I would like to remind us that we're still considering the amendment. So all those in favor of amending Bill 345 with the amendment in front of us, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We have passed the amendment, and now any just further discussion on Bill 345 as amended. Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 345, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much for the discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
That
you,
moves us
Councilman
on to
Charlie.
Bill 349.
Bill 349, resolution authorizing the office of the mayor to enter into an agreement or agreements with Precision Infrastructure Management to provide professional services related to the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan at a cost not to exceed $620,740 over 2 years.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I would say aye, but we probably should have had her to the table since she sat here that whole time.
Would we like to, so thank you for the reminder. I would like to have someone call this group up to the table to discuss. There's been a lot of work that goes into that's gone into this, and I know there was a desire to discuss.
Okay.
Would someone like to?
To the ADA coordinator, do you want to come forward? And Zeke and whoever, I can't remember names. Sorry. She just told me the other day. I talk to her all the time.
Councilwoman.
Hi, good morning. Just briefly give us an update of what this is.
Yeah, so thank you to council for having us here today.
If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm Zeke Redeker, the mayor's executive advisor on legal policy, and with me here today is Michelle Walker, the city's ADA coordinator. And the ADA transition plan is something that has been a long time coming for the city of Pittsburgh. We haven't done an ADA transition plan, which is federally required, in 32 years. 2 years after the ADA was passed in 1990, we discovered that the city did a transition plan. We had to go to the archivist to figure this out. And we're really proud to be sitting here today. And if I may, Councilwoman, I'd like to defer to our ADA coordinator to say a few words.
Yeah, that's why I wondered. I felt like she waited this whole time. So.
I'm also, thank you for your introduction, Zeke. I'm also honored to be here today. We're seeking on behalf of the Mayor's Office of Equal Protection to enter into this contract. This is overdue. I'm here on behalf of the city's mayor's office, but I'm also here on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh's most vulnerable residents, people with disabilities. This is long overdue, and we hope to enter this contract and have your vote today.
Is that it?
That's all I have to say.
Okay. And I'll just say,
you have any questions?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, are you working with the mayor's? He has a group of people with differing abilities. Are you working with that group?
Absolutely. We're collaborating with the City County Task Force on Disabilities, for sure.
I think it was
Absolutely.
my disability. I can't remember anything, okay?
It's okay.
I apologize. But anyway, and I would also, and I've asked this every time anything comes to the table for people with differing abilities, that you please include the students at Pioneer School District and maybe the School for the Blind and other places, hearing impaired, so that the students who are our future have some say in what's happening in the future of the city of Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that suggestion. When we do the ADA transition plan here in the city of Pittsburgh, what the consultant is going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to take a look at all of our policies, programs, streets, facilities, services. Pretty much everything that the city controls or provides will be assessed to determine our level of compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the first year, what happens is we have a self-evaluation where we determine our level of compliance. And then the second year, they go about creating an actual transition plan for us where they tell us and work with our department on how to go about fixing these problems. So this is a really exciting thing for the disability rights community here in Pittsburgh. It's something that's long overdue, and we really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you about it today.
I'm going to say I actually won an award from the Education Law Center for my work with people with disabilities. And I just want to say they're also great to have at the table because they do a tremendous amount of work with students across the city of Pittsburgh and across the state, actually. So I would like to see that, some of them involved as well. But I think that I would like, something to be included is I continue to hear about businesses that don't have access for people with disabilities, and sidewalks that have cars parked on and are in disrepair. So all those things, I think, are just tremendous challenge for our disabled community or varying ability communities with varying abilities. And I would like to see us some way work with other people in the city, maybe our nonprofits, maybe foundations, to come up to code in some of those areas, and so that we're helping people access everything the city of Pittsburgh has to offer, no matter what your ability is. And I'm glad to see this finally happening. So if I can ever be of any help, please let me know. Thank you. And I want to say, Michelle and I talked, she spoke about spoke so highly of you, Zeke, and
Thank
what
you,
a great,
Councilman.
she said the whole department she spoke really highly of. So I just make sure I mention that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Walker, just for the record, if you could introduce yourself with your name and title. I know we kind of had bits of your title and some of your name, but.
Sure. I'm Michelle Walker. I'm the ADA coordinator for the Mayor's Office of People Protection.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the floor. Madam Smith. Thank you. I'm glad we brought up sidewalks and parking. Thank you, Councilwoman Smith. I am curious, and if we need to kind of pursue the question, if you can't answer it at this moment, that's totally fine. Usually when we're talking about, I've worked with the ADA coordinator, it's been around new construction or around traffic calming or around it's definitely small business, and I've got a kind of long-running request. I had an amendment that expired because we couldn't figure it out that I'll bring back to you about how to help small businesses redo their front steps. And so I know we've had some funding programs, so I'll bring that one up. So that's one. The second one is, and I don't know the answer, and you may not either, that if I have a neighborhood sidewalk that is constantly blocked by parked vehicles, and I have a complaints, I can show you there are 311 numbers that are constantly saying they're closed, but every day I'm having constituents email me the photo of the vehicle back there again. I circle by myself, I see the same vehicle. We know the license plate, it's constantly there. According to the constituents, it's been there for years. Constant 311s, lack of action, lack of results, maybe move it for half a day, move it back again. Can I call you and talk to you about this? Is there something we could try to figure out together?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Happy to discuss that, and also how we bring the city's resources in different departments to bear on solving a problem like that. Because
It's not like we haven't called the zone police. It's not like we haven't called 311 and 911. It's not like we have. I mean, this has been, it's very frustrating for the resident. And I'm sure. We would like to see action instead of inaction.
Yeah, happy
Awesome.
to have that discussion.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I'll follow up then. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had some questions around when you were talking about that we're 30 years overdue. Is that what you're saying?
32.
So can you help me understand this? Because there's been a lot of strides that have been made for, that the city's done. I mean, you can look outside and see mostly every corner that's, that's just probably 1,000th of things that have to happen. But can you help me understand what this means? So, for instance, if we're federally required to go through a transition plan that was 30 years ago, can you just help me understand why that is the case, that it was 30 years ago and we're just revisiting that now?
I can't speak to prior administrations. I can't speak to that. I can only speak for now. It needs to be done now because it hasn't been done in 34 years. I can't speak to why it hasn't been done before.
The federal government doesn't
So it's
communicate with
required
us
to be done.
saying that we're out of compliance or something? I'm just having a hard time understanding how something 30 years old is now.
Yeah, we actually encountered the same thing that you're going through right now when we were trying to figure out the last time the city did something like this.
I mean, does the federal government, did you reach out to them and say, is this still relevant?
Oh, it's still relevant.
Okay.
It's the Americans with Disabilities Act is very much still the law of the land. It
Well,
was
of course,
passed
but
in
30 years
1990.
ago, I'm just trying to understand what
Yeah.
Like what I mean, so there's a requirement to have a ADA self-evaluation. What it's saying here, so ADA self-evaluation and transition plan from what currently was 30 years ago to at the time was 30 years ago. So now we're 30 years past there, and there's been different things that have been included, that we've included here.
That's right.
Well before 30 years ago is like, that was 10.
Yeah.
So just trying to understand, there's been a lot of different things that have happened since then. So that's going to cover everything that's been done and is currently happening, and then what else has to be done, right? That's the obvious thing, I guess, that's going to be reported.
It's a comprehensive review of where the city is at now in 2024, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and then how to fix it.
So are we required to hire someone to do this, or is this something we can do in-house?
Oh, this is a massive undertaking, and that's part of the reason you see the contract is priced the way that it is, and we get federal assistance to fund.
Oh, great! What's the amount of federal assistance?
It's all of it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I think at the margins we had to put in a little bit to make it work on the front end and the back end, but this is a multi-year contract funded overwhelmingly by the federal government.
So the federal government was like, it's been 30 years, I'm glad you're now capitalizing this money?
No, we went out, we put out an RFP to do this a couple of years ago, and none of the bids came back within the range of the money that we had put up, because it's really expensive to do something like this. Imagine having to look at every street and determining the level of accessibility. Imagine having to look at every park and determine whether or not people who have disabilities can use that park. It's not something we can do in-house, and that's why you have fairly sophisticated vendors like Precision Infrastructure Management who specialize in this kind of work and have done it for other cities of our size.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any Councilperson Warwick?
Yeah, I just briefly want to say thank you for being here, and I'm very glad that you are here at the city doing this work. Certainly, my experience as a resident and sort of activist prior to coming to council, there was really in many things, and I don't think it was intentional necessarily, right? But many cases in recent years where the concerns of the disabled community just simply weren't addressed in many, whether it be sidewalk cafes or scooter programs or you name it, just BRT designs and where you get out of the car and what just that and it is a small community, and it is our most vulnerable community, and they certainly don't have, I mean, in terms of numbers, don't have any kind of real voting power, right? And it's a group of folks that really have to advocate very hard for themselves just to live and move around the space that the limited neighborhoods where they can move around, like Oakland or something like that. So I'm glad that this work is being done, and just sort of a reminder that in all things, right? But this is a very good example. Is that when we plan and design for the most vulnerable among us, we end up serving everybody better, right? So we have streets and I mean you name it, right? We have something that works for everybody if we're centering around the needs of the most vulnerable. So anyway, thank you for this, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of this project.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilwoman Carol Smith.
I just want to add, I know we oftentimes say what a great job you guys are doing, and you are doing a great job, but I don't want to discount that the previous administrations have all done their own things in these areas too. They may not be as elaborate as this, but I don't want to discount what other previous administrations have done. I think everybody would love to do everything we can to help every resident in every way. I just wish we had the budget to go with it. So I think that's our challenge. I just don't want to, I don't want the moment to go away that I don't recognize that other people have done work too.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zeke, welcome. Thank you for the work you do.
Nice to see you.
Yep, I appreciate you always being attentive to me towards anything. Michelle, thank you. I appreciate your advocacy and the work that you do.
Thank you.
A couple just small things, really. You know, I personally work with advocates who are in wheelchairs and need to get around, whether it's a sign on the sidewalk or a piece of sidewalk that really needs replaced. It's hard for them to get over. So I'm really happy to hear about this precision infrastructure, and that's kind of what they do, right? They're going to just like examine every sidewalk, every intersection, everything.
Everything that's in the right of way for
right.
people to have access, yes. So programs, services, activities, we want to make sure everything in the city is in compliance.
Right, and that's
so
going to be
they assess everything.
Right, citywide.
Citywide.
And it's $670,000. That's really, I mean, you know, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money still, but you know, considering, do they have a length of time that they will kind of report back to us on?
Yeah, so it's a multi-year project. First year, like I mentioned, self-evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
What's the scope of the problems, right? What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? Second year is the creation of the transition plan, public engagement, and you will see at the end of 2 years, that's when we will start getting the deliverables from the company, and very sophisticated stuff, mapping, geo-mapping.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, we were really impressed with the quality of the proposal we received from PIM. They go by PIM for short.
Okay, gotcha.
And we think this really is a step in the right direction. And considering the fact that this is something the federal government requires us to do, and they're able to fund these kinds of projects, we're happy to do it because we think it's been too long.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. And $670,000 to me is not a heavy price tag for what we're getting in return. But once they do come back with their findings, Zeke, then there's no reassurance that we will have the money to make these alterations, corrections, or whatever it may be. We are counting on federal money then, and the grant process for that. And part of that grant process is you have to have this evaluation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is this federal law requires this, and it is one step. You know, you're talking about, sort of multiple steps to getting to the city to where it needs to be at, and this is a really important first step.
I see that. Yeah, that's great. And hopefully it will bear fruit, and I guess it'll be 2 years, when they're 3 years before we get a final product from them.
Roughly 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
It may,
as soon as
we
get that
into the third year.
As soon as we get that that piece of paper that says we went through the process, then we can apply for the grants. Correct.
Right.
Right.
And maybe even before then, right? You know, once the self-evaluation is complete, we'll have a sense as to what really are the high need repairs and changes that we need to make. And in the event that we're able to make some headway on that sooner rather than later, I think that's for the best.
Yeah, sure. Were you going to say something, Michelle? No. Okay. I do want to throw a shout out to PRT. They, in Beachview neighborhood, are putting I think it's going to end up being an $8 million station for ADA, make sure it's ADA accessible ramps. First of its kind in the nation. They're getting calls from all different other cities. They haven't even started the project yet, so we hope to start it this fall, if not the spring of next year. But yeah, and it's right between, there's about 1.5 miles between the two stations that are ADA accessible. So this fills a gap, fills a void in the neighborhood of Beachview where, just makes it accessible for everybody. And I know when I see people getting on buses, it's difficult. I mean, you have to have a certain size bus to make the turn, the radius. So the T is a really great, I guess I'm promoting for people to live on the T and, move to Beachview. But yeah, so it's really great, and once that station's done, it's really going to be fabulous. It's going to be, again, the only of its kind.
It's exciting.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you, Zeke. I appreciate it. Actually, I'd like to take the credit. I deserve some of it just for pushing it forward, but PRT and State Senator Fontana, all had their hands in on it. But yeah, we're all supportive of it, and we're all looking forward to that.
as we were talking earlier about some of the challenges of Pittsburgh, I have some streets where they don't have driveways. They park up on the sidewalks, which of course, causes a big problem. But here's the other problem. If they all park on the street, which is legal in a lot of them, both sides of the street, then the fire truck can't get in. Ambulance can't get by. So it's like,
They'll just run over.
it's complicated, It's very complicated as to how you'll solve these problems. The curb cuts, I love those. I think that was a federal project? I mean, they're everywhere now. They pretty much got every intersection.
Best practice now.
Yeah, right. And it's wonderful. But even at that, as much as it's needed, you know what that's causing for me in some of my neighborhoods? Flooding. Because where that curb cut was, now that water's just rushing up like it's like a river going into people's yards. So it's complicated. I'd rather have the curb cuts for the ADA accessible. We'll deal with the flooding in another way, or just pray to Mother Nature that she, doesn't.
But this is exactly the kind of thing that the ADA transition
Yes.
plan is supposed to look at,
Good.
right? So
That's
if you're
great.
doing curb cuts, right, are there incidental effects to doing those curb cuts? And how do you balance, people living together in communities in a dense city like the city of Pittsburgh, and how do you make things right for people with disabilities?
Yeah, no easy job. No, I'm finished. I'm good.
I want to hear more. I want to talk more about it. So call for
You
post
call for the
agenda.
post agenda, and I'll be there. Right? So, Zeke, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continuing with continuing with second round, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. Just briefly, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we have the front door with the business thing and the blocking of the sidewalks. And maybe I'm kind of reiterating Councilwoman Smith's point that we should have a kind of longer discussion about these things, because we have the opportunity to really look and see where we have we're creating an ADA problem instead of solving it when we have so much new construction. I've had so much new construction and so many new sidewalks or sidewalks rebuilt. And I have complaints right now that the construction's been going on for more than a year. And so that sidewalk for a whole city block has been really inaccessible. They've got like a construction permit, right? And other places where driveway permits or curb cuts have been issued. And so now it's almost impassable in a very high frequency sidewalk. We're just a high density population and now have to navigate these crazy driveways every foot. So that, and then lastly, I just wanted to briefly acknowledge Richard Meritzer, who served in this role for 12 years and was a just much loved constituent and resident of the city of Pittsburgh. And again, as we're talking about a kind of legacy of what we have and haven't done, many of the things that have been achieved wouldn't have been achieved without Richard having been the champion. So I just wanted to remember him and acknowledge his memory. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 349, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
That moves us on to Bill 350.
Bill 350, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Gannett Fleming, Inc. for expert witness services in connection with two matters filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas for an amount not to exceed $16,890.71 over 1 year.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion?
Just briefly, do you know what it was for? What the legal matters were? They had an executive session, but
We held an executive
briefs and
session. I just don't know if I'm at liberty to say at the table or not.
Okay, so I'll abstain until I get that information.
Okay.
I should have
Happy to
attended.
follow up with you
Yeah,
afterwards.
I should have attended the executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention. Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to invoices. Can I have a motion to approve invoices?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of invoices, please say aye.
Aye.
Invoices are approved. That moves us on to P cards.
Motion approved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of P cards, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
P cards are approved. That moves us on to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee chaired by Councilperson Warwick.
Bill 351, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for airspace leasing, ownership, and maintenance obligations of a bicycle facility on East Ohio Street between Madison Avenue and Chestnut Street. This resolution serves to authorize only the agreement or agreements at no cost to the city.
Motion to hold for 2 weeks, please.
Second.
Motion hold in a second. All those in favor of a 2-week discussion?
Yeah, what's the hold for?
I think there's some confusion about whether it needs to happen. I mean, not the project, but like the agreement, whether it needs to happen. There's some confusion around.
Okay, can you bring me into the discussion?
Yeah. I don't know the details. I was just asked to hold it for 2 weeks.
We hold for 1 week.
Okay.
So withdraw. Does she have to withdraw? I'm sorry.
Motion to withdraw the 2-week hold?
Okay, motion to withdraw, and then motion to hold for 1 week.
Second.
Okay.
Good, yeah.
Second, all those in favor of a 1-week hold, and please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Bill will be held for 1 week. Thank you. Bill 352.
Bill 352, resolution amending Resolution 464 of 2023, authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works to execute an agreement with the Pennsylvania Resources Council in order to continue providing electronic waste collection and recycling services for city residents by extending PRC's services for an additional 1 year and increasing the authorized spend by $135,000 for a new total amount not to exceed of $310,000.
Who's Public Works?
Oh, motion to approve.
Second with discussion.
Motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah, I just want to know why we're extending it and why we're not doing a new RFP. If we have any answers for that.
I don't know why.
I mean, I'm supportive. I started the e-recycling program with Dan Gilman in the city, but I do feel like...
Is the director was there? I think that there was actually a mistake in the previous amount, so this is just like adjusting the amount.
Just adjusting the amount?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 352, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Human Resources Committee chaired by Councilman Charlin.
What's this for an additional
Bill
1 year?
342, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service to enter into an agreement with Goodwill of Southwestern Pennsylvania for administrative services related to the 2024 Learn and Earn Summer Youth Employment Program at a cost not to exceed $200,000.
Bobby? Sorry.
Motion to approve.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 342, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Moves us on to Land Use and Economic Development Committee chaired by Councilman Wilson.
Bill 1817, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title 9, Zoning Code, Article 4, Chapter 919, signs, to regulate the use of non-advertising signs for major public destination facilities in the RIV-NS district.
I'll defer to the bill sponsor, Council President.
Motion to table, actually.
Second.
Discussion?
So, working with the planning department, they would have this would be totally rewritten a totally different way if we were to do it this way. But there's also discussion with North Shore stakeholders of creating an entire sign district. And so this bill functionally is no longer needed.
Get rid of it.
I just want to say great work with Councilman Lavelle all the time. Thank you.
Okay.
In case for whatever reason we ever had to bring it back.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say briefly that I think we need to have some conversations about signage in general across the city of Pittsburgh. people, we're making it more and more difficult for businesses to operate, but yet we want jobs for people. And, they need to advertise and they need to do what they need to do to make their businesses thrive as well. And these are a lot of times mom and pop shops that can't get signage approved, and it's just a conversation I want to have, and I think I'll probably call for a post agenda on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you allow
Councilman Wilson, interrogatory?
Yeah.
I believe that we, whenever Director Kinder was here, that those requirements were removed so that it could make it easier. But it would be good to get a follow-up.
I would love to tell you then, because I had 3 businesses, their signage denied this week.
Well, it'd be good to get a follow-up. I just wanted
So I'd love to have that conversation. And I'll actually start showing what's happening in my districts compared to what the others, so you can see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call vote on the motion to table?
Mr. Charland.
Aye.
Mr. Coghill.
Aye.
Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle.
Aye.
Mrs. Kell Smith.
Aye.
Mrs. Warwick.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Mrs. Strasburger, Chair.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Motion to table has been approved. That moves us on to Bill 59.
Bill 59, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title 9, Zoning Code, Article 5, Use Regulations, Chapter 911, Primary Uses at Section 911.02, Use Table in Chapter 911.04.A.69, Use Standards, to permit single-unit attached residential uses in residential single-unit detached districts, subject to certain standards.
Motion to approve discussion.
Second.
With discussion, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all speakers and everyone on council that came to the public hearing last week to make comment about this bill, and members for their support. I want to thank all the members that had been engaged in on this bill, whether through co-sponsorship or conversation. Really appreciate all your time and your efforts to be a part of this. Basically a zoning reform bill, and although small and seems pretty like a good first effort, I would say part of what I believe should be a larger conversation of what we talk about here. So looking forward to many more bills like this to come. I am happy to have worked with Corey Lehman and Kate Rakes and everyone at the planning and zoning. Also to have the administration support as well. It's very important that they're on board with this, and really it's just an honor to represent a community that is trying to be so impactful, that they've done the due diligence of having all this community outreach to then devise their what their neighborhood plan would look like, and then they're going after projects like the neighborhood choice neighborhoods project, planning and efforts there. Hope there's more money to come, but also they're really trying to fill all the different gaps in housing in their neighborhood. And what started out as a conversation about this one project and how it was denied, because it had to go for a variance. A project that started in Fineview, they had to go for this variance, and then they were denied in court. And so I think that once that was brought to the public's my attention, the public's attention, and all of council's attention, that it was really quite interesting to have all the conversation with members and see how we all of us support this citywide to make sure that houses can touch, and that there is there is less red tape, no red tape, and less red tape in some instances. If you have a lot that's 35 greater than 35 feet, you would need an administrative exception still, but lower than that you wouldn't, and it would be a by right program. And happy to see the recommendation from planning, and just really looking forward to getting this across the line. So I know Mr. Lehman's here if anyone has any questions, but I'm really looking forward to the vote and next week to getting this passed so that, you know, more projects can start to see the less red tape that's not present anymore. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kell Smith.
Thank you. And I actually am waiting for information from Mr. Lehman. Could you come to the table, please? Thank you. I first want to thank you, Councilman Wilson, because I do know you have been doing a lot of work engaging council, but this has been an issue for my district, and I continue to talk about it. It was great to see all the white speakers come down and talk about how this would be racist if we didn't pass this. But I actually went and actually talked to black residents that would be affected by it, and I have a very different story. And so I'd like to know how exactly this would affect Chartier City, and how many parcels are we talking about there? Because it is an area that they value their land, they value their space. That I just want to say, if anybody doesn't know, Chartier City is a predominantly black neighborhood, the only predominantly black neighborhood in my district, and they have one of the highest home ownerships in the city of Pittsburgh. It is and low crime. It's what all neighborhoods should strive to be, regardless of race. It's what all neighborhoods should strive to be. They are an amazing neighborhood, but they have questions about how this will affect their neighborhood, and I need to know how many parcels exactly we're talking about.
Sure, Councilwoman, I don't have a specific number of parcels offhand. When we met after the hearing, I showed you on our database all of the sort of different parcels in Chartier City. They are largely all over 35. I think the average is around 58 feet wide. So it's my professional opinion that just about in every circumstance, if someone wanted to build an attached home in that district, or two attached homes, which is what you would really have to do in order to have this come up, they would require a special exception at Planning Commission. At the zoning board. So there would be a public hearing for community.
So I would like to know the numbers. I need to show the community exactly how this will affect them. So I can't just say they want to see, and that's why they are so great. They want verification. They want to see, real numbers. And it's not just Chartier City. I have other neighborhoods that feel the same way. They want to know how it's going to affect our district. So I'll abstain today. But if it comes next week, I'm going to ask for a recommittal so that my community can have their voice heard, or I'll try to carve my district out of this, because I have to do what I have to do for my residents, because this is important to them. They have one attached parcel in that area, and they've had a lot of issues with it. And so because of that, I want to be very careful that I'm not affecting an amazing neighborhood in a very negative way. That I'm helping them to maintain what they've built and what they've started. And it's probably the only neighborhood in my district that the city hasn't touched, or government hasn't touched in some way and destroyed. So, I have quite a few that they've done things in, and I talk about it all the time here, so I won't belabor the point, but because of those reasons, there's a lot of distrust of what's happening with the properties and land in my district. So for those reasons, I'm going to be very guarded and making sure that they're very protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 59, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
One abstention. Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. And congratulations, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say, I know Councilman Wilson means well for the whole city. This is not directed towards him.
Thank you. New papers, Bill 353.
Bill 353, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of City Planning to enter into an agreement or agreements at no cost to the city of Pittsburgh between the city of Pittsburgh and Janelle Young for the installation and maintenance of a mural at the Arch Street basketball court.
Motion to approve discussion.
Second.
Second with discussion?
You might come into the table. Thanks. I'm assuming that's what you're here for, Mr. Cavallini. I just had a quick, sorry, if you could introduce yourself for the public.
Yep. Tony Cavallini, Public Art Planning Manager from the Department of City Planning.
This may be, thank you for coming to the table. I think this may be something we figure out throughout the week and then amendments made, but I think there's just, technically it looks like that Mr. Young would I'm sorry, I don't know. Janelle Young would, huh?
Ms. Young.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say Janelle Young is would own the actual mural, and so if for some reason in the future, I'm just wondering how that plays out if we have to, for instance, repave the. Would that be denied somehow? Do we give rights to Janelle?
Yeah, let me just give you a brief. There's a lot of community members and community individuals who want to do what we call limited term art in the public. A lot of those are like intersection murals. This one's on a basketball court. We've worked with law per our collection management policy to figure out a way for community members to do that, where essentially at no cost, there's no money being exchanged, and the artwork doesn't come into the possession of the city, so we're giving it permission to be there. That includes a provision that the city can get rid of it at any time for any reason, really. It also adds in a maintenance plan, so the community member or community group is responsible for maintenance. There's a check-in period, and if it has been well maintained and the community likes it, they can then apply for an extension of that period. But at the end of whatever period is currently existing, it's the responsibility of the applicant, the community member, to remove it. Okay. So, for instance, that's how we avoid intersection murals that look really good for a year and then don't look good for like 12 years.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Councilperson Warwick.
Yeah, so this is actually interesting because there's interest to do intersection murals in my district, but it's always, talking to Domi, it just sounds like it's just impossible. So is this a way, if the community can raise the money to do it?
Yeah,
this
is designed to help communities do this if they want to, because we do get a lot of outreach about that. And it's not something that the city has the resources to maintain. So this was coming up with a way that community members and groups can implement these if they want to. We support them by creating the agreements, working them through law. When it is DOMI, it is part of a permit. So it's a minor encroachment permit for the street, and then this agreement gets added as an attachment to that permit.
And if it was a PennDOT road, does PennDOT need to be involved? I just have one in particular that I know.
That I would have to, I guess so. We haven't had a PennDOT road come up, but I would have to, we work with law pretty closely on these, so they would have to advise us.
That's great. That's great news. Thanks.
Thank you. We have Councilman Charlin, followed by Councilwoman Gross.
Just very quickly here, this is in Councilman Wilson's district, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I know Janelle very well. She did the court in our district in Belts Hoover, and I just want to say you're lucky that Janelle is coming to your court here. She's Belts Hoover born and raised. I think she lives in Chicago now mostly, but she does fantastic work, and I love that we're able to keep a local artist employed here in the city, and I think this is something that we should really celebrate here. And check out Janelle's other work. I think her social media is JY Originals, but she's awesome. So congratulations to you, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross, followed by Council President Lavelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So congratulations, and I'm so excited to see this. And also, we're probably going to flood your inbox now with requests for these minor encroachment and community, what were their cooperative agreements with the community?
License and maintenance.
License and maintenance requests, because yes, we've been trying to throw this for a very long time, and so congratulations, and it's a great day for all of us, because famously Friendship had raised money, gotten I think a Bloomberg grant, and it still took 3 years to figure out how to work with the city to get it installed. It's beautiful. It's well maintained. I was happy to show up and do some of the painting after arm wrestling with the bureaucracies for 3 years, which was very frustrating for everybody. But luckily that one did get installed. And so if we have multiple requests, because this is part of traffic calming, it's part of neighborhood safety, as well as being part of kind of neighborhood organizing, and a great way for people to work together and to come together for a beautification project. But primarily the requests are around intersections that need to be traffic calmed. So it's a really, this is a good thing. So we have another tool that is more easy to use now. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and this one is for a basketball court, but you will, I think, be seeing more of these. There is an intersection near the Carnegie Library of Woods Run that you'll see, I think, coming up in the next month or so, as well as the side of a rec center in Arlington.
Oh, well, I expect one coming from Morningside too, so we'll
right.
talk to you more about that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair, that's all.
Thank you. Council President Lavelle.
Thank you. Just to sort of follow up on Councilman Wilson's question, the bill reads, intends to grant Janelle Young license to install and maintain the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for Janelle to maintain the artwork, correct? Not for the city?
Correct.
Okay. And then it says without transfer of ownership to the city of Pittsburgh, which means Janelle then owns that artwork.
Correct.
So I have two technical questions.
Mm-hmm.
How do we grant ownership of artwork on public property?
Essentially the same way, to my understanding, essentially the same way like a minor encroachment works, where a privately owned thing gets permission to exist on city property. So in this case, the artwork, it's not really a thing without the surface it's on in this case, but it's essentially not putting that artwork into the city's collection of permanent art, because it is what we consider limited term art. So we have a different set of rules around how it operates according to our collection management policy, because we understand that these are pieces that, while we hope they're there for more than a year and they're planning to be there for more than a year, no one's expecting them to be there forever.
Right. Okay, thank you. Second question would be, if a year from now, for whatever reason, we have to come in and repave the surface, given Janelle owns the artwork on the surface, if she were to say no, does the agreement speak to that?
Yeah, the agreement speaks. The law department is pretty adamant about that sort of thing. So it is very clearly laid out that the city can remove the artwork at any time. And artists sign a Visual Artist Rights Act that gives us that ability.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tony, thanks for the work you do. I really appreciate the work you're doing up in Beachview with the grant that we had received. I followed the latest email, and that seems to be, people are excited about it. So I look forward to seeing where that goes.
Yeah.
But to Council President Lavelle's question, I'm glad you brought that up, because, a few years back there was some artwork and some discrepancy as to, we can't take it down because the artist owns the artwork.
Right.
And, I think we had that conversation. Any new art installation, no matter what it is, if the city deems they need to remove it, we're clear, right?
Yeah, a lot of those discrepancies come about because of VERA, the Visual Artist Rights Act. So the VERA waiver for any new artwork is something that we now include within.
Yeah, which wasn't included before.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I have, I don't even want to call it a mural. It's really poorly done, I feel. And it's like everybody's afraid to paint over it or do something with it, because then I don't even know who the artist was. But okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. Any new installation, especially being that we're going to be getting one in Beachview.
Right.
And again, I look forward to where that's going. And thank you for your work and coming out and informing the community and getting everybody on the same page. So okay, that's it for me. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Councilman Wilson.
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to register aye votes for all remaining bills.
All remaining bills. So noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us on to Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Gross.
Bill 346, resolution amending resolution number 763 of 2023, which authorized additional funding for maintenance services related to the Falcon Red document scanning station by authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Finance to extend the agreement with OPEX Corporation for maintenance services and associated software licenses for 1 year, and increase the authorized spend by $26,310 for a new total not to exceed of $106,730.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
With discussion, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. I'm going to anticipate the question from Councilwoman Smith that is this rebid. And I believe, but I will verify before next Tuesday for you, Councilwoman Smith, anticipating and trying to read your mind, that this is another case which the department has been doing fairly consistently, which is that in the crazy changing technology marketplace, they are kind of extending for just 1 year, especially when you're getting up to like the 5th year or so of using a technology. And I see Madam Chair like nodding her head because I'm sure she was briefed on the same things, right? And to have the time to kind of methodically go through all of these various technology contracts on a regular basis to then reissue a bid, again, as the marketplace especially changes. Sometimes companies have gone away, sometimes new companies have entered the market for these technologies, but it takes a lot of very careful forward planning to even be ready to make a transition in order to rebid it. It's not like buying rock salt from a different vendor, where there's literally no impact on city functioning from getting a different, vendor of rock salt. But if you're going to migrate like all of, let's say hypothetically, like city council's emails archives or like the clerk's office registrar to a different vendor, you have to plan, because you could just lose all your information if you sloppily jump from one technology vendor to another. So it really, I appreciate the Director Norman's very methodical planning out in advance. Are we ready to make changes in our technology platforms, right? And so getting us ready so then she can rebid them. So this is another one of those.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 346, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention. Affirmative
So you're gonna give me that
recommendation.
information.
Yeah.
That moves us on to Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee chaired by Councilman Mosley.
Bill 348, Resolution amending Resolution 2024-0291, requiring a council vote on the intergovernmental cooperation agreement or agreements between the City of Pittsburgh and Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh and County of Allegheny, Pittsburgh Public School District, and Pittsburgh Land Bank for the shared operation and administration of the Pittsburgh Land Bank.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Discussion?
Just briefly, I just want to thank council for supporting this. I know it's not always easy to undo some things or to add things once we pass them, but I think whenever we authorize any type of contract, there are certain contracts we don't have the authority to vote on, but there are a lot of contracts, most contracts that we are actually supposed to vote on. So I just want to make sure that we see what we're actually voting on before we give a final okay. So we can just vote it up or down, not negotiate it. So I just want to make sure people understand that.
Thank you.
And I think that we all want to see the land bank succeed and do well. We all know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think Councilwoman Gross, you suggested some amendments toward this, like it had to be a city.
Don't make me
You want
jump
me to
over
clarify?
there.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
This is not the bill that we discussed for a year. So there are two different contracts.
Oh, okay.
The first contract was the contract between the URA, the Land Bank, and the City of Pittsburgh. It's a cooperation agreement about how we transferred properties, and we did put conditions on that cooperation agreement or contract. This is not that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Where is that, by the way? Is that still in?
Fully up, and that's why we've seen, in my opinion, that's why we've seen the land bank be so productive, because council gave it clear marching orders and priorities, and it's been great. So, yes,
No,
that's
I
great.
meant where was the,
You don't want me to respond to that?
where was the amendment you were asking for as to, the new appointees to the land bank school district, somebody from the school district?
So
and
this
somebody
is
from-
also not that.
No, I know.
Okay, so we did pass with it was actually
Oh, yeah, we did
Councilman
pass that
Lavelle
then, right.
made an amendment about the eligibility requirements for the two new board members taking the Land Bank Board from 9 members up to 11 members. And that was passed a couple of weeks ago. This is a third thing, which is an agreement between the 3 taxing bodies and the land bank on how those taxes will be handled, back taxes will be handled, basically. And it's wonderful, and I'm fully supportive of Council Member Smith's amendment here that the public and council will be able to see what are the terms that are negotiated, and council will have the ability to put that contract up or down. So I'm fully supportive today.
Thank you.
Good, very good. That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, well, I'll just say for my part, I really feel it's council's rule to weigh in. I don't think I'm saying too much that's different from others, but weigh in on the front end. That's where our role is, to weigh in on the front end. So let's be very diligent about ensuring that the terms of what we'd like to see in the contract are expressed at the beginning, not necessarily at the end, but thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 348, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. That brings us to new papers, Bill 347.
Bill 347, resolution amending Resolution 64 of 2022 that authorized the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into a cooperation agreement with the Pittsburgh Regional Transit, Allegheny County, and the Urban Redevelopment Authority concerning the Bus Rapid Transit Project in order to increase funding for BRT project staffing contributed to the city from Pittsburgh Regional Transit by $307,500.
Can I please get a motion on behalf of Councilman Mosley?
Second.
Second with discussion.
With discussion, Councilwoman Kell Smith.
Yeah, I think we need an update on where we are with all this, because we have not had a lot of updates on this, and this is a lot of money. But I would also like to say, I would also like to hear how they're going to fix the Mont Incline, as we're divvying out money. I would like to make sure that the Mont Incline is not forgotten. I mean, PRT has a lot of responsibility, the county has a lot of responsibility, and when you talk about transit for people with disabilities, a lot of people do use that because they can get their wheelchair on an incline. So they can't necessarily get to the Duquesne. The one has some stairs, but there's a way that they do that. They work with everybody on that. So I'm just going to say it's a vital piece of transportation for Mount Washington. And we talk about all the different modes of transportation. I tell people all the time, our district has every type of mode of transportation you can expect. Imagine, I said, with 2 inclines, the Gateway Clipper fleet, with the those things that you ride and stand, I can't remember, but there's a lot of stuff that comes from District 2, and the Mont Incline actually contributes a lot to the Shiloh Street business corridor. And I can tell you residents and business owners are not happy that it is taking so long and that there's been such a lack of sense of energy or sense of emergency in the response. But I do want to acknowledge that Grant Gitlin from Sarah Honorato's office came to a meeting last week, which I think has started some things moving. So I think that he's been very helpful in that regard. And I'm hoping that it continues, but if not, I'll be back at the table to talk about it. But I do know that it's important to our district. So when we talk about PRT and things that they do, I want to make sure that they understand that this is important.
Any further discussion?
Stop anybody.
Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 347, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our meeting's agenda. Next week, council will hold both the regular and the standing committee meeting on Monday, April 22nd at 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. respectively. To register to speak at next week's council meetings, please fill out the sign-up form in its entirety on the council meeting webpage by 9 a.m. the day of the meeting. You may also register by calling the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138. On Wednesday, April 24th at 11 a.m., council will hold a pre-agenda interview for Bill 356, appointing Jamil Bey as the Director of Department of Planning of the City of Pittsburgh. Can I please get a motion any comments from members? Councilwoman
I'm sorry,
Kell-Smith.
go ahead, Council President.
No, I was just going to remind members, Mayor of Kingstown is filming here on Monday, so we'll be parking this coming Monday when we have our double meeting. So we park at the lot across the street at 4th and Ross, that little corner lot. Just want to remind you.
Oh, that's not bad. I was getting ready to have a fit about it, but okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman Kale-Smith.
Thank you. I just want to say that I want to call for a post-agenda. I can't remember what it was for.
Would you like to call for post-agenda on the joint task force on city finances?
For the joint task force on the city finances, and I'd like to call for several briefings. Do you want to do it, Council President? You're the... No, okay. And several briefings, and so the council is updated constantly through, and part of the conversation throughout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With a second, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We will call for, we will schedule a post-agenda and several briefings on the joint task force on the city finances.
Thank you. And I also do want to thank Councilman Lavelle, because I think he's had it's difficult being council president, and it's really difficult juggling the different opinions. And, when you have somebody with a temper like me, when you have other people, trying to push every agenda possible, it's difficult balancing that act. And I think he's doing an amazing job. I think we have a really good leader in him. So I just want to make sure I acknowledge that.
Any further comments? Councilman
Yeah,
Coghill.
just a public service announcement for McGann and Chester. That's the contract we have with the city towing. Councilwoman Gross and I were on the phone with the owner last week, and he asked me and us to inform all members. I don't know does anybody know the date of the marathon?
First weekend.
The 5th,
First weekend of
May
May.
5th.
So they get overloaded. They don't have enough space to put the cars they have to tow. And we don't want our constituents screaming and yelling at us because they were towed. And it's incredibly hard now because there are no parking meters. They used to put the signs on the parking meters, as to no parking because of the marathon. Now they're putting them in spaces where people aren't seeing them. So they asked us to post on our social media, our websites, that please, especially if you lie in the path of the marathon, which I don't, but that we try to inform our constituents as well as we can in advance. And I'll remind us weekly until that time, I guess, if we have to. All right.
Thank you. Any further comments from members? Seeing none, can I please get a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.